Hello, sleepy traveller. Tuck yourself in, dim the room, and prepare for a peaceful drift through uneventful history. And if you feel like these videos are of any use to you, then you can like and subscribe, but only if you really feel like it. And now, let's begin. You stir from slumber under a pile of heavy woolen blankets, the chill of the dawn creeping in through the stone walls of your castle, a medieval wake-up call that'll make you appreciate central heating real fast. Forget any notions of waking up to sun-drenched rooms. Your chamber is more likely lit by the dim glow of a dying fire. Welcome to the 14th century, where your title of royalty comes with a side of constant draughts. The servant, already up and bustling about, tosses a log onto the hearth. You might think being royalty means lounging till noon, but nope, you're up early, especially if there's business to attend to. And spoiler alert, there's always business. As you rise, a chamberlain, your personal go-to for all things daily routine, enters to help with the morning ritual. In medieval terms, this means slipping into layers of garments, often made of silk and wool, because nothing screams power like dressing for a polar expedition inside your own home. Now, about that hygiene. If you're expecting a hot shower, think again. Bathing is an event, not a habit. It involves a wooden tub, hot water hauled from the kitchen, and a level of effort that makes you question whether cleanliness is worth the hassle. Daily washing is more about strategic face and hand rinses, and a splash of rose water if you're feeling fancy. Let's be honest, with a diet heavy on garlic and onions, a little olfactory offence is unavoidable. With the basics of hygiene medieval style out of the way, it's time for breakfast. Now, forget toast and cereal. You've got a literal feast awaiting you. The morning spread is less about variety and more about bulk. Picture a table laden with bread, cheeses, cold meats, and occasionally a pottage or two. Basically a stew that covers all food groups in one pot. And yes, ale or wine is on the menu because the water is about as reliable as a medieval weatherman's sunny day forecast. The sumptuous display is quite impressive, but let's not kid ourselves. This isn't because medieval royalty had a particularly discerning palate. It's economics, baby. Food is a status symbol, and nothing says, I have more money than sense, like a breakfast buffet that could feed a small village. And speaking of economics, running a castle is no small feat. You're not just a royal, you're a CEO of a medieval corporation with a workforce to match. Your castle, that bastion of stone and status, is a logistical nightmare. It's not just about keeping the place standing, but ensuring it runs smoothly. Enter the chamberlain again, the unsung hero of castle management. This guy oversees finances, manages staff, and even handles the tricky business of keeping stock of supplies. Running a castle is like playing a never-ending game of medieval Monopoly, where you're always one bad harvest away from financial ruin. And let's talk staff. A royal household isn't just a family affair, it's a small army of servants, cooks, grooms, and more. At least 100 people buzzing around. Each has a role, whether it's a cook preparing your meals or a groom attending to the horses. They ensure that the wheels of royal life turn smoothly, and you'd be in quite the pickle without them. So much for the myth of luxurious, carefree castle life. The reality is, being medieval royalty is as much about duty and management as it is about pomp and ceremony. The grandeur of your breakfast table might be the envy of the common folk, but the complexities behind maintaining that image are enough to make anyone appreciate the conveniences of modern times. As you sip your morning ale, ponder the irony. Your life might be a dream to some, but it's a full-time job that demands attention from morning till night. As you finish off that morning ale, it's time to roll up those silk sleeves and dive headfirst into the midday maelstrom of medieval royalty. And no, you don't get to kick back with a round of chess or joust with the knights like some romanticized courtly drama. Instead, you're heading straight into the day's second act, courtly duties and political intrigue. It's a balancing act that makes walking a tightrope look like a stroll through the meadow. First, let's talk about the Royal Council. Picture it as the medieval version of a board meeting, only with more velvet and fewer PowerPoints. This is where the kingdom's fate is hashed out, one heated debate at a time. You've got your chancellor, the treasurer, the occasional bishop, and maybe even a few barons if they're not too busy quelling a peasant uprising. Their titles might sound fancy, but these folks are the kingdom's power players, each with their own agendas and ambitions. Imagine trying to broker peace between a pack of hungry wolves over a single steak, and you've got the gist of it. The council isn't just about keeping the peace, it's where alliances are forged or shattered. And let's not mince words here. Alliances are the medieval equivalent of insurance policies. They're your best bet for survival when the neighbouring lord decides your castle would look better as a pile of rubble. In 14th century Europe, political alliances were often as fleeting as the summer sun, requiring constant attention and a knack for diplomacy. Alliances could be sealed over a goblet of wine or broken with a single misspoken word. It's a political chess game where the stakes are land, power, and sometimes your head. Now, let's debunk a classic myth, the romantic tale of arranged marriages. Spoiler alert. They weren't exactly candlelit dinners and moonlit serenades. These were power moves, plain and simple. Your marriage was your kingdom's stock option, an asset to be traded for military support, trade routes, or a strategic peace treaty. Forget about marrying for love. That's a luxury for troubadours and poets. You, dear royal, are a pawn in a game much larger than personal desires. Arranged marriages were less about soulmates and more about soul-crushing obligations. But hey, at least the wedding feast was usually a spectacular affair, complete with enough roast boar to feed a battalion. Speaking of political strategy, let's not overlook the significance of courtly love. The chivalric ideal of knights pining for unattainable ladies, composing sonnets with the fervour of a modern-day pop star writing about their latest breakup. But scratch beneath the surface of these romantic myths, and you find a theatre of social manoeuvring. These poetic declarations were less about genuine affection and more about gaining favour, securing patronage, or simply climbing the social ladder. It was a delicate dance of appearances, where words were weapons and love was a currency all its own. The reality was that the court was as much a battlefield as any field of war, with gossip as deadly as a dagger. Here, alliances could be made over a wink or a whispered promise, and the wrong word to the right person could spell disaster. It was a world where perception was everything, and maintaining your status required constant vigilance. One misstep, and you could find yourself on the outside looking in, with nothing but your titles to keep you warm. As the midday sun casts its long shadows across the stone floors, you find yourself at the heart of this intricate web of power and politics. Each decision you make echoes through the corridors of power, influencing the lives of countless subjects and shaping the very future of your realm. It's a responsibility that weighs as heavily as your crown, demanding a blend of cunning, wisdom, and a touch of ruthlessness. But before you start feeling too overwhelmed, remember, this is the life you were born into, and destiny waits for no one. The tapestry of medieval politics is as rich and complex as the tapestries adorning your castle walls. And while the romanticized tales might paint it all with a rosy hue, the truth is far more intricate and compelling. As you navigate these treacherous waters, keep your wits sharp and your allies closer. The day is far from over, and the night promises its own set of challenges. Stay tuned, because the next chapter of your royal saga is about to unfold. With the council adjourned and your head spinning from the morning's political gymnastics, it's time to trade the clamour of court for the orchestrated chaos of the hunt. Because, let's be real, nothing says, "I'm a big deal," like galloping through the woods with a pack of hounds and a retinue of riders. But, as with everything in your opulent yet precarious life, there's more than meets the eye. Before you get too swept away by the romantic image of a noble clad in finery, bow in hand, let's talk logistics. A hunt isn't just a leisure activity, it's a full-scale operation. Imagine planning a corporate retreat, only with more horses and less PowerPoint. First, you've got to assemble your hunting party, an entourage of knights, squires, and servants, numbering anywhere from 12 to 100, depending on just how much you want to flaunt your status today. And then there are the dogs, crucial players in this medieval drama. Breeding, training, and maintaining a pack of hunting dogs is no small feat either. These aren't your average mutts from the local medieval pound. They're carefully selected breeds, like greyhounds, bloodhounds, and mastiffs, each with a specific role in the hunt. Think of them as the medieval version of a sports car collection. Impressive, expensive, and a sign that you've got your finger on the pulse of aristocratic trends. These dogs, each worth a small fortune, are tended to by handlers whose job it is to ensure they're in peak condition for the chase. Slacking off isn't an option here. A subpar performance could mean the difference between a successful hunt and coming home empty-handed. As you ride out, the thrill of the hunt is palpable. The forest stretches before you, a sprawling labyrinth of trees and undergrowth, ripe for adventure. But hold your horses, literally. The hunt isn't just about the thrill of the chase, it's a high-stakes game of strategy and endurance. Your quarry might be a deer, boar, or even a formidable bear, and each requires a different approach. It's a test of skill, patience, and, let's face it, sheer luck. The romanticized image of the noble hunter in perfect harmony with nature? More like a sweaty, muddy slog through the wilderness, with the constant threat of injury, or, heaven forbid, a disgruntled boar charging at you like a medieval freight train. And let's not forget the economics of it all. The cost of organizing a hunt is staggering. Between the horses, the hounds, the weapons, and the sheer number of people involved, you're looking at the medieval equivalent of burning a pile of gold coins. But for medieval royalty, the hunt serves a dual purpose. It's not just about filling the larder with game, it's a display of power and prestige. Because nothing says, I rule this land, like trampling through it with a small army. Once the hunt concludes, whether successful or not, you return to the castle, your appetite whetted for the next big event, the feast. Now, the medieval feast is where reality and legend really part ways. Forget the image of a quaint dinner party. This is a full-blown spectacle designed to showcase wealth and power. The dining hall becomes a stage, and you, dear royal, are both the host and the main attraction. Setting up a feast is a Herculean task. Imagine catering a wedding every week with enough food to feed an army. The kitchen staff, under the watchful eye of the head cook, works tirelessly to prepare a spread that would put any modern buffet to shame. Meat is the star of the show: roast boar, venison, and birds of all kinds, accompanied by a dizzying array of breads, pies, and pastries. And let's not forget the fish, because it's not a real feast without some pike or eel making an appearance. But here's the kicker. The feast isn't just about indulgence, it's a strategic move in the game of status. Each dish is a declaration of wealth, each rare spice a nod to your connections and power. And while the food might seem endless, the reality is that it's as much about spectacle as sustenance. Those extravagant dishes, they're more for show than for actual consumption. The real sustenance is in the simpler fare, the bread and pottage that fill the bellies of your guests, while the peacocks and swans remain largely untouched. The entertainment doesn't stop with the food. A feast is a multi-sensory experience, complete with minstrels, jugglers, and sometimes even jesters to keep the mood lively. These performers are the medieval equivalent of your Spotify playlist, setting the tone and keeping the energy up. But let's be honest, the jesters are often more about laughing at than with. Their antics provide a safe outlet for poking fun at the high and mighty, a risky endeavour that requires a sharp wit and an even sharper sense of self-preservation. As the meal winds down, it's time for the piece de resistance of afternoon leisure, games. And what better game to illustrate the cerebral prowess of nobility than chess? This isn't just a pastime, it's a microcosm of medieval strategy, a chance to flex those mental muscles honed in council chambers. The chessboard mirrors the battlefield, with kings, queens, knights and pawns maneuvering for dominance. Each move is a careful calculation, a reflection of the real-life machinations that define your days. Yet, while chess offers a civilized retreat, not all games are so genteel. Enter the brutal world of medieval sports. Forget your sanitized modern athletics. These are contests where the stakes are as high as the risks. Jousting, for instance, is the medieval equivalent of combining football with a car crash. Knights in full armour charge at each other with lances, aiming to unhorse their opponent. It's a spectacle of skill and bravery, sure, but also one of danger. Injuries are common, and fatalities aren't unheard of. Yet, for the nobles, it's a chance to prove their valour, to earn glory, and to entertain the masses. And here's where we bust another myth, the idea that these events were all in good fun. In reality, they were as much about politics as they were about sport. Winning a joust wasn't just a personal triumph, it was a boost to your family's prestige. It could curry favour with the king, open doors to advantageous alliances, or secure promises of land and titles. In short, Medieval sports were a high-stakes game of reputation and influence, where every bout was a gamble with real-world consequences. As the afternoon fades into evening, you're left to ponder the intricate tapestry of medieval entertainment. It's a world where leisure is inextricably linked to power, where every activity is a statement, every gathering a performance. The chessboard, the jousting field, the dining hall. Each is a stage where the drama of nobility unfolds, a reminder that in a world ruled by appearances, maintaining your status is the ultimate game. But don't get too comfortable. The day isn't over yet, and the night brings its own set of challenges and intrigues. From clandestine meetings to after-dinner negotiations, the wheels of royal life never truly stop turning. So, take a moment to catch your breath, because the next act in your medieval saga is about to begin, and it promises to be as unpredictable as a roll of the dice. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cobblestones, you might think it's time to kick back and relax. But hold on to your crown, because your evening is about to get as bustling as a modern-day Black Friday sale. Welcome to the medieval banquet, where the stakes are high and the wine flows like a 14th-century river of diplomacy. Forget your quaint notions of a cozy family dinner. This is a grand spectacle that would make even the most extravagant wedding planner break into a cold sweat. First, let's talk about the setting. The Great Hall is the heart of the castle, a cavernous space that could easily host a medieval version of Coachella. Its stone walls are adorned with tapestries depicting epic battles, mythical beasts, and occasionally an ancestor who looks suspiciously like he's had one too many ales. This is the stage for your evening's performance, and every detail is meticulously planned to scream wealth and power. You've got long tables lined with benches, a high table for the VIPs, that's you and your closest allies, and enough candles to rival a modern-day power grid. Now, let's dive into the menu. The medieval banquet is all about excess, but not just for the sake of indulgence. Each dish is a statement, a culinary power move designed to show off your resources and connections. We're talking about courses that could rival a Michelin-starred tasting menu. You've got roast peacock, served with its feathers intact for that extra flair, alongside wild boar, venison, and maybe even a swan or two if you're really looking to impress. And here's the kicker. These aren't just for eating. They're edible status symbols, as much about politics as they are about palate. But wait, there's more. The spice game is on point, with saffron, pepper, and cloves making appearances like they're the medieval equivalent of celebrity chefs. Why so much spice, you ask? Simple spices were the Bitcoin of the Middle Ages, a currency of the elite. If you were tossing saffron into your stew, you were basically saying, I can afford to season my food with gold. Of course, this means the cost of a single banquet could rival a small kingdom's GDP, but hey, what's a little financial ruin in the pursuit of prestige? Yet these feasts aren't just about food, they're high-stakes diplomatic games. Every guest at your table represents an alliance, a negotiation, or an opportunity. The seating arrangement alone is a Rubik's Cube of political maneuvering. Sitting someone too far from the high table? You might as well declare war. Place a rival too close to the head? Expect a dagger in your back, metaphorically of course. Unless you've really misjudged the mood, then maybe literally. And speaking of guests, let's not forget the entertainment. The medieval feast is a sensory overload, with minstrels strumming lutes, jesters making fools of themselves, and sometimes others, and performers pulling out all the stops. It's medieval dinner theatre, a carefully orchestrated display where every note and jest is designed to keep the peace, or at least distract from any awkward political tension over the soup course. Now, let's debunk another myth, the idea that these feasts were all about gluttony and merrymaking. Sure, there's enough food to feed a small army, and the wine flows like water, because, let's face it, medieval water isn't exactly Evian. But beneath the surface, it's all about control. The banquet is a tool, a way to reinforce hierarchies and remind everyone of their place in the pecking order. It's a medieval power play, where every bite is laden with meaning and every toast is a subtle reminder of who's in charge. As the evening wears on, you've got to navigate the tricky waters of medieval etiquette. Forget about forks and knives, you're eating with your hands, and there's a whole unspoken rulebook about which hand to use for what. Napkins? Forget it. You've got trenchers, stale bread plates that soak up the juices and, if you're feeling charitable, can be tossed to the poor post-feast. And speaking of etiquette, let's not forget the hand-washing ritual. Before and after meals, it's a big deal. Basins of rose-scented water are brought out, and attendants help you wash your hands. It's less about hygiene and more about showing off your refinement and status. After all, nothing says, "I'm above you," like being able to afford water scented with flowers. As the banquet draws to a close, you might think it's time to wind down. But remember, this is medieval royalty, where the night is young and the after-party is where the real action happens. Secret deals are struck over goblets of wine, alliances are forged with a nod, and sometimes, if you're lucky, you might catch a glimpse of a courtly romance blossoming in the shadows. But don't get too comfortable. Tomorrow is another day, with its own challenges and intrigues, waiting in the wings to test your mettle. So, as you retire to your chamber, take a moment to reflect on the evening's pageantry. The medieval banquet is a microcosm of the world you inhabit, a place where appearances rule and every action is a move in the great game of power. It's a world of spectacle and strategy, where the food on your table is as much a weapon as the sword at your side. And just like that, with the flicker of candlelight and the murmur of satisfied guests, another chapter in your royal saga comes to a close, leaving you to ponder the delicate balance of power, prestige, and the occasional perfectly roasted peacock. The night may be over, but the dance of medieval life continues unabated, a tapestry of intrigue and ambition woven into every moment. So rest well, dear royal, because tomorrow promises to be as unpredictable as a medieval feast menu, and you'll need all your wits about you to navigate the challenges ahead. Stay tuned, because the story of your medieval existence is far from finished. And so the candles flicker out, and the echoes of the banquet's revelry fade into the night, leaving a silence that is only broken by the occasional clatter of a servant clearing the remnants of the feast. You might think it's time to finally retreat to your chamber and let sweet oblivion take over. But not so fast, dear royal. The evening is far from over, and your duties are only just beginning. First up, you've got the private meetings. These aren't just casual catch-ups over a goblet of wine. These are the real heart of your royal business. Here's where the machinations of power truly unfold, away from prying eyes and the chaotic din of the banquet hall. Imagine it as a medieval version of a high-stakes poker game, where every word is a card played and every silence a bluff called. These meetings are where you'll decide the fate of alliances, the movement of troops, or the future of a wayward noble who's been eyeing your throne a little too covetously. Let's talk specifics, shall we? If you're a king or queen of England in the 14th century, you might find yourself in a tete-a-tete with a trusted advisor about the 100 Years' War, which, spoiler alert, isn't just a poetic name. It really did drag on for over a century, starting in 1337. You're mulling over a decision that could cost thousands of lives and drain the kingdom's coffers faster than you can say tax hike. Or perhaps you're negotiating trade rights with the Hanseatic League, a medieval powerhouse of merchants that controlled trade across the North Sea and the Baltic, making today's Fortune 500 look like a lemonade stand. These are not casual chats, they're the stuff of legends and nightmares. But let's not forget about the economic context here. Running a kingdom is expensive, and the royal treasury isn't some bottomless well of gold. In reality, it's more like a leaky bucket you're constantly trying to fill. War, feasts, and maintaining a court full of demanding nobles who are less loyal vassals and more entitled teenagers. It all adds up. Your average medieval monarch is perpetually short on cash, and balancing the books is as much a part of your job as wielding a sword or wearing a crown. As the night deepens, you might slip away for some evening prayers. Now, this isn't just a quaint ritual, it's a political move wrapped in piety. Religion is the medieval glue that holds society together, and being seen as a devout ruler is as crucial as being seen as a strong one. You're playing the long game here, aligning yourself with divine right because nothing says God's chosen like a little candlelit contemplation. Besides, in a world where the afterlife is as real as the morning's bread, securing your spot in heaven is just another item on your to-do list. Now, it's time to reflect on the responsibilities and burdens of your royal role. Sure, being royalty comes with perks, opulent banquets, grand hunts, and the ability to mint your own coins with your face on them. But those perks, they come with pressures that could flatten the castle wall. Every decision is a double-edged sword, every alliance a potential betrayal waiting to happen. In a time where life expectancy hovers around 30 to 40 years, and disease and warfare are as common as rain in England, the stakes couldn't be higher. You might even wonder whether the perks truly outweigh the pressures. Is it worth the constant vigilance, the endless game of political chess that leaves you perpetually one wrong move away from disaster? After all, happily ever after is a fairy tale invention, a comforting myth in a world where the throne is as stable as a wooden chair on a ship in a storm. Securing your legacy means always looking over your shoulder, always questioning the motives of those around you, and accepting that peace is as fleeting as the summer sun. But here's the twist. That vigilance, that constant awareness, it's not just a burden, it's a survival skill. It's what keeps you on the throne, what ensures that your name is remembered. It's a reminder that in the grand tapestry of history, every thread matters. Every decision, every alliance, every whispered promise in the dark has the power to ripple through time, shaping the world in ways you can't even begin to imagine. So, as you finally retire to your chamber, the weight of a crown heavy on your brow, think of your royal journey as a lesson in the complex dance of power and responsibility. In a world where appearances matter as much as reality, where myths are as powerful as truth, you've navigated the treacherous waters of medieval life with a deftness that would make even the most seasoned courtier jealous. And thus the day draws to a close. You've juggled politics, pageantry, and power with aplomb, proving that even in an era of knights and castles, the real battles are fought not on the field, but in the halls and hearts of those who dare to rule. Sleep well, dear royal, for tomorrow awaits with its own set of challenges, ready to test your mettle once more. But for now, rest easy knowing that you've mastered the art of medieval sovereignty, and that's no small feat in a world where the only certainty is change. In the grand tapestry of human history, Roman architecture is that bold, flamboyant thread that refuses to go unnoticed. You know, the kind that grabs you by the toga and demands your attention. Now, before we dive into the nuts and bolts of Roman construction, let's set the stage by acknowledging their influences. Those crafty Romans didn't just wake up one day with a blueprint for the Colosseum, after all. They had a little help from their friends, the Etruscans and Greeks. It's like the Romans were the cover band that went on to outsell the originals, and boy did they hit the jackpot in the architectural charts. The Etruscans were the mysterious mavericks of the Italian peninsula around 700 BCE, and they were pretty savvy with their engineering. These folks knew their way around an arch, and they passed that knowledge on to the Romans like a secret family recipe. Meanwhile, the Greeks were lounging in the Mediterranean, perfecting the art of columns and temples that could withstand a good old earthquake. The Romans, ever the opportunists, took a double helping from both cultures, giving us a mashup that was as sturdy as it was stunning. But while the Romans were busy borrowing architectural styles, they stumbled upon something that would become their secret weapon, concrete. That's right, the mundane grey stuff we curse at during roadwork season was the Romans' not-so-secret sauce. It wasn't just any concrete, though. It was a volcanic, ash-infused concoction that might as well have been called Mount Vesuvius's gift to builders. This wasn't just your run-of-the-mill ash, this was the supercharged stuff. The kind that made Roman structures last for millennia. Imagine volcanic ash as the duct tape of the ancient world, holding everything together from aqueducts to amphitheatres. Concrete transformed Roman architecture from a Greek-inspired knockoff to an empire, defining innovation. With it, they could build bigger, faster, and more extravagantly than ever before. Picture the Pantheon with its massive dome, a feat of engineering genius. That thing's been standing since around 125 AD, defying gravity and common sense with a big, unapologetic grin. The Romans might have borrowed the arch, but they perfected it. And they didn't stop there. They turned the arch into the vault, then the vault into the dome, creating structures that were not only functional, but awe-inspiring. Now, it's easy to romanticize the Romans as architectural geniuses, but let's not forget that this wasn't just about creating pretty buildings. There was a method to their marble madness. Rome was expanding faster than a pizza empire, and they needed infrastructure to match. Roads? Check. Aqueducts? Double check. The Romans laid down over 250,000 miles of roads, and we're talking about roads that outlasted the empire itself. Their aqueducts could stretch up to 60 miles, bringing water to cities with populations over 1 million numbers that would make any modern urban planner swoon. The Romans understood that architecture was as much about power and propaganda as it was about aesthetics. These monumental structures were a testament to Roman might, a way to awe both their subjects and their enemies. The Colosseum, for instance, wasn't just a sports arena, it was a statement, look what we can do. It could hold between 50,000 to 80,000 spectators, all there to witness the grandeur and, of course, the gladiators. Of course, all this grandeur came at a cost, both financial and human. The labor behind these marvels was often less than voluntary. Slaves, prisoners of war, and lower-class citizens were the ones mixing the concrete and hauling the stones. The romantic image of the Roman architect sketching plans with a flourish should be paired with the reality of thousands toiling under the Mediterranean sun. It's a sobering reminder that while the Romans built for the ages, it was often on the backs of those who had no choice. But let's get back to our architectural heroes. The Romans weren't just about brute strength and grandiosity, they had finesse too. Take the baths of Caracalla, completed in 216 AD, which wasn't just about bathing but socializing, exercising, and yes, even a little business networking. These baths were more like luxury spas, showcasing self-heating floors and opulent marble decoration. You can almost hear the Roman elite discussing politics while enjoying a good soak, perhaps pondering whether the empire would last as long as their infrastructure. In the end, Roman architecture was about more than just buildings. It was about building an empire, one that would influence the world long after the last stone was laid. The Romans took the best of what others had to offer, added a dash of volcanic ash, and created a legacy that still looms large today. It's a testament to their genius, ambition, and yes, their ability to swipe an idea and make it even better. So the next time you're stuck in traffic cursing the concrete jungle around you, spare a thought for the Romans. They were the original masters of the urban landscape, and they did it with style. Now, speaking of style, let's pivot to one of the most iconic elements of Roman architecture, the arch. Ah, the arch, a deceptively simple curve that's been holding up the Roman Empire's greatest hits for centuries. While your modern-day DIYer might struggle to assemble flat-pack furniture without losing a screw, the Romans were busy perfecting an architectural marvel that could support the weight of empires. The arch was the linchpin in their construction toolkit, and it wasn't just about aesthetics. This wasn't just a pretty face, it was the backbone of Roman infrastructure, a structural wonder that was as practical as it was poetic. The secret sauce of the arch lies in its ability to distribute weight evenly, which meant the Romans could build taller, wider, and stronger. It was like they unlocked the cheat code for architecture. Suddenly, bridges could span wider rivers, and aqueducts could bring fresh water from the distant hills straight into the heart of bustling cities. And speaking of aqueducts, let's give a standing ovation to the unsung heroes of Roman engineering. These ancient pipelines weren't just about quenching a thirst, they were about transforming city life as we know it. Picture this. You're a Roman citizen in a city of over 1 million people. It's hot, it's bustling, and you're eternally grateful for the cool, clear water flowing through the aqueducts, keeping the public baths running and the fountains gushing. These aqueducts were the lifeblood of the empire, stretching for miles, sometimes over 60 miles to be precise, and dropping a mere inch every 300 feet. Talk about precision. It was like the Romans were playing an ancient version of The Price is Right, and they nailed the showcase showdown without ever going over. One of the most jaw-dropping examples of their engineering audacity is the Pont du Gard in southern France. Standing at an impressive 160 feet tall, this three-tiered aqueduct bridge is a testament to Roman ambition. It's the kind of structure that makes you want to take a step back, put your hands on your hips and just say, wow. Built around 50 AD, the Pont du Gard transported water across the Garden River to the Roman colony of Nemours, now known as Nemes. This wasn't just a bridge, it was a statement piece, an Instagram post waiting to happen if only they'd had smartphones. The logistics of moving water across such vast distances were mind-boggling. They had to source the water, channel it through mountainous terrains, and ensure it arrived at its destination without a hitch. It was a feat of engineering that involved not just the physical labor of thousands, but also the mathematical acumen of ancient surveyors who could have given today's GPS a run for its money. Imagine the Romans, armed with nothing more than plumb lines and measuring rods, masterminding a water delivery system that would put modern plumbing to shame. Meanwhile, in our supposedly advanced age, we're still grappling with leaky faucets and clogged drains. Yet, the real genius of Roman aqueducts wasn't just the engineering, it was the social revolution they enabled. Bringing fresh water to the masses wasn't just a public service, it was a political move, a way to keep the urban populace happy and, more importantly, loyal. These aqueducts were the arteries of Roman cities, ensuring that the public baths were filled, the fountains flowed, and the citizens stayed squeaky clean, or at least cleaner than they would have been otherwise. Of course, the aqueducts weren't just for the average Roman Joe. The elite had their own private pipelines, ensuring their villas were as well hydrated as their social calendars were packed. But let's not get too misty-eyed about the Romans' egalitarian waterworks. The reality was that, much like today's world, access to these amenities was often a reflection of one's social standing. And let's not forget the economics of it all. Building these colossal structures wasn't cheap. It was an investment in the empire's future, a bet that the benefits of a well-watered populace would outweigh the costs. The Romans understood that infrastructure was a cornerstone of empire building, and they weren't afraid to splash some cash, or rather some denarii on it. This was state-sponsored construction on a scale that would make any modern government wince at the budget meetings. Yet, in all this grandeur, there lies a myth that needs debunking, the notion that Roman water systems were flawless. Sure, they were marvels, but they weren't immune to the issues that plague any complex system. Corruption, mismanagement, and even lead poisoning were the downsides of their waterworks. That's right, the very pipes that brought life-giving water also delivered a dose of lead, courtesy of the lead-lined pipes. It was the empire's dirty little secret, one that historians still debate today. Was lead poisoning a factor in Rome's decline? The jury's out, but it's a sobering reminder that every silver lining has its cloud. As we wade through the waters of Roman engineering, it's clear that these aqueducts were more than mere utility. They were a symbol of Roman ingenuity, ambition, and yes, their ability to turn a practical necessity into an art form. The Romans weren't just building infrastructure, they were building a legacy. They knew that the true power of an empire wasn't just in its legions, but in its ability to sustain its people, come hell or high water. So, next time you're stuck in traffic cursing the latest construction project, take a moment to appreciate the Roman arches and aqueducts that made such feats possible. They were the original architects of the urban landscape, the grand masters of grand designs. Their legacy is etched in stone and water, a testament to a society that dared to dream big, build bigger, and leave an indelible mark on history. And as we move forward in our exploration of Roman architecture, remember, there's always more beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. Stay tuned for the next chapter in this epic tale, where we'll delve deeper into the wonders of Roman engineering and the empire it helped sustain. And as we move further into the heart of Roman innovation, it's impossible to ignore the colossal scale of their public spaces, starting with the heavyweight champion of them all, the Colosseum. This wasn't just an amphitheatre, it was Rome's answer to go big or go home. Situated smack dab in the centre of the city like an ancient megaphone, it boasted a seating capacity that would make modern stadiums blush. Around 50,000 to 80,000 spectators could cheer, jeer, and watch history unfold. The Colosseum was more than a structure, it was a statement. Constructed under the Flavian emperors, it served as a testament to Roman might and ingenuity. Completed in 80 AD, this architectural marvel was built in just under a decade. That's right, a decade. Today, it feels like it takes that long to get through a season of bureaucracy. Made of stone and concrete, the Colosseum was the ultimate flex, a monumental reminder of Rome's power to both its citizens and any would-be adversaries eyeing the empire's borders. But why sink so much time, money, and manpower into a single venue? The answer lies in the political strategy of bread and circuses, a phrase coined by the satirical Roman poet Juvenal. It describes the appeasement of the masses through entertainment and food. The emperors knew that keeping the populace entertained and fed was a surefire way to maintain control. And what better distraction than a grand spectacle of gladiatorial games? Ah, the gladiator games, a staple of Roman entertainment that continues to capture the modern imagination. Thanks to Hollywood, we envision these fights as epic battles of honor and valor. But let's not get swept away by the silver screen's sepia-tone nostalgia. In reality, these games were brutal, bloody, and anything but noble. They were a means of control, a way to channel the public's aggression and dissatisfaction away from the state and towards a few unfortunate souls in the arena. Gladiators were often slaves, prisoners of war, or criminals. Their lives were far from the romanticized image of warriors fighting for freedom. Sure, a few managed to win their freedom or become celebrities in their own right, but for most, the Colosseum was a place of no return. The games were a complex mix of sport, spectacle, and social control, serving as both a release valve for societal tensions and a reminder of the emperor's power. It was reality TV with a grim twist, where the stakes were life and death. Economically, the games were a massive enterprise. The costs of staging such events were astronomical, funded by the state or wealthy sponsors seeking favor with the masses. The logistics alone were mind-boggling. Animals from across the empire had to be captured, transported, and housed, while gladiators required training and sustenance. The Colosseum even had a complex system of pulleys and trapdoors, allowing for surprise entrances and dramatic reveals. It was an ancient production that would make any modern event planner break out in a cold sweat. Let's not forget the Roman Forum, a bustling hub of activity that was, in many ways, the beating heart of the empire. This was where politics, commerce, and social life converged. Imagine it as the ultimate open office space, where senators negotiated, merchants hawked their wares, and citizens gathered to hear the latest news. The Forum was the original social network, a place where everyone who was anyone wanted to see and be seen. The Forum's architecture was as grand as its purpose, with temples, basilicas, and triumphal arches lining its paths. Each structure was a symbol of power, a testament to Rome's glory, and a tool of propaganda. The emperors used the Forum to showcase their achievements, immortalizing their victories in stone and sculpture. Every arch and column told a story, reminding the people of Rome's conquests and the might of its leaders. Yet, beneath the marble veneer, the Forum was also a stage for political maneuvering and intrigue. It was a place where power was brokered, alliances formed, and rivalries fanned. The political motivations behind these constructions were as layered as the structures themselves. By investing in public spaces, emperors could curry favor with the populace, legitimize their rule, and leave a lasting legacy. However, the grandeur of these public spaces wasn't just about politics, it was also about economics. Rome was a city of over 1 million people, and these spaces were essential for maintaining the flow of goods, information, and services. They were the economic arteries of the empire, facilitating trade and commerce on a scale that was unprecedented for the time. The bustling markets of the Forum were where fortunes were made and lost, where the economic pulse of the empire could be felt. The construction of such monumental spaces required resources, lots of them. Stone, marble, and concrete were hauled from quarries across the empire, while skilled and unskilled labourers toiled to bring the emperor's visions to life. It was an economic engine that drove growth, creating jobs and stimulating trade. Yet, this economic powerhouse was built on the backs of those who had little say in its creation, slaves, and the lower classes who bore the brunt of the labour. Despite their beauty and utility, these spaces also reveal the darker side of Roman society. The disparity between the elite and the masses was stark, with the splendour of the Forum and Colosseum serving as a constant reminder of the social hierarchy. The same spaces that provided entertainment and commerce also reinforced the divide, with the elite enjoying the best seats and the finest goods, while the commoners jostled for a glimpse of the action from the cheap seats. The myth of the egalitarian Roman public space is just that, a myth. While these spaces were open to all, access and experience were determined by one's social standing. The Colosseum, for instance, had a rigid seating hierarchy, with the emperor and senators occupying the best seats, while women and slaves were relegated to the nosebleed section. It was a microcosm of Roman society, where power and privilege dictated one's place in the grand spectacle. So, as we wander through these ancient spaces, it's important to see them for what they were, both a triumph of human ingenuity and a reminder of the social and economic realities that underpinned them. The Colosseum and Forum weren't just architectural marvels, they were tools of control, symbols of power, and engines of economic activity. They tell a story of an empire at its zenith, a society that was as complex as the structures it built. As we continue our journey through the annals of Roman architecture, let's keep our eyes peeled for the next chapter in this epic tale. There's still more history to uncover, more myths to debunk, and more insights to glean from the stones and shadows of this ancient civilization. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the wonders of Roman engineering and the empire it helped sustain, for the story of Rome is far from over. As we continue to unravel the layers of Roman architectural genius, the Pantheon stands as the crown jewel in their collection of marvels. This grand structure, with its iconic dome, is the architectural equivalent of a mic drop, an audacious statement that is echoed through the ages. Built around 125 AD during Emperor Hadrian's reign, the Pantheon is a testament to Rome's unyielding ambition and their flair for turning architectural dreams into stone-cold reality. But, as with all things Roman, the story behind this engineering masterpiece is as intriguing as the structure itself. The Pantheon wasn't the first attempt at such grandeur. In fact, it rose from the ashes, literally, of two previous temples that had succumbed to fire. Think of it as Rome's phoenix, reborn with a dome that would make even the most seasoned architect's jaw drop. The dome's staggering span of 122 feet was the largest in the world for over a millennium, a record that held until the modern era decided to play catch-up. The sheer audacity of constructing such a dome without the aid of modern machinery is a feat that borders on the miraculous. But let's not get too carried away with the romantic notion of Roman architectural perfection. The Pantheon was the product of trial and error, a concept that would resonate with anyone who's ever had to assemble flat-pack furniture. The Romans weren't immune to the occasional miscalculation or structural hiccup. The first Pantheon, built by Agrippa in 27 BC, was destroyed by fire in 80 AD. The second, constructed by Emperor Domitian, also went up in flames. It wasn't until Hadrian's version that the structure we know and love today came into being. It's a classic case of third time's the charm. At the heart of the Pantheon's success was a savvy use of concrete and architectural innovation. The Romans, always the overachievers with a penchant for volcanic ash, concocted a lightweight concrete that could support the dome's massive weight. This wasn't just any old mix. This was high-tech, ancient-style engineering. They used a series of progressively lighter materials, with the heaviest at the base and the lightest, such as pumice, at the top. It was a genius move, ensuring the dome could stand tall without collapsing under its own ambition. Now, let's talk about that oculus, the Pantheon's piece de résistance. At 27 feet wide, this open-air eye in the sky serves as the building's only source of natural light. It's like the Romans knew what Instagram was before it even existed, creating the perfect filter for their architectural masterpiece. But this wasn't just for show. The oculus also served a practical purpose, reducing the weight of the dome and allowing for ventilation. And when rain falls through it? The Roman engineers cleverly designed the floor with a slight gradient and drainage holes to manage the water. Talk about thinking ahead. It's like they had a Roman crystal ball. And while we're on the topic of foresight, let's address the economic and social costs of such grand designs. The Pantheon, like many of Rome's architectural feats, was built on the backs of countless labourers, including slaves and skilled artisans. This wasn't a weekend DIY project. It was a massive undertaking that required resources from across the empire. From the marble sourced in Egypt and Turkey to the skilled craftsmen recruited from various corners of the Roman world, the Pantheon was a global effort long before globalization was even a thing. The labour behind these monumental projects wasn't just about muscle, it was about precision and skill. Roman builders were the unsung heroes, the ones who took Hadrian's vision and turned it into a reality. Yet, their stories often remain untold, overshadowed by the grandeur of the structures they created. It's a sobering reminder that the glory of Rome often came at a steep human cost, a fact that adds a layer of complexity to the seemingly flawless facade of Roman architecture. But let's not gloss over the Pantheon's artistic achievements. The Romans didn't just build structures, they crafted experiences. The interior of the Pantheon, with its harmonious proportions and exquisite decoration, is a masterpiece in its own right. The coffered ceiling, with its intricate patterns, was not merely decorative, but also served to reduce the weight of the dome. Each coffer was meticulously crafted, showcasing the Romans' ability to combine function with form in a way that would make any modern designer envious. The Pantheon's grandeur wasn't just about architectural prowess, it was a political statement. Hadrian, the emperor with a wanderlust that would put any travel blogger to shame, used architecture as a medium to convey power and divine connection. The Pantheon, dedicated to all the Roman gods, was a symbol of Rome's religious tolerance and its emperor's magnanimity. It was a space where politics, religion, and art coalesced, creating a narrative that reinforced the emperor's divine right to rule. In the broader context of Roman society, the Pantheon was a reflection of the empire's wealth and stability. It was a time when Rome's coffers were brimming, thanks to conquests and trade. The construction of such a grand edifice was both a celebration of prosperity and a tool of propaganda. It was a message to the world that Rome was not just a city, but the center of the universe, a hub of power, culture, and innovation. Yet, amidst all this grandeur, let's debunk a myth, the idea that Roman architecture was the epitome of perfection. While they achieved feats that seem almost superhuman, they were not without their failures and miscalculations. The Pantheon stands as the testament to Roman perseverance, an example of their willingness to learn from past mistakes and keep pushing the boundaries of what was architecturally possible. It's a lesson in resilience, a reminder that even the most monumental achievements come through trial and error. As we peer through the oculus of history, the Pantheon offers a glimpse into the ingenuity and ambition of an empire that dared to dream big and build even bigger. It is a symbol of a civilization that, despite its flaws, left an indelible mark on the world. But don't be fooled by the romanticized image of Roman perfection. Remember the laborers, the resources, and the countless trials that paved the way for such triumphs. The story of Roman architecture is a tapestry of innovation, ambition, and human cost. And as we continue our journey through the annals of ancient engineering, remember that there's always more beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. Stay with us as we dive deeper into the wonders of Roman construction, exploring their triumphs and tribulations. Because in the world of Roman architecture, the story is far from over, and the next chapter is just around the corner, ready to unravel its secrets. As we venture further into the legacy of Roman architecture, it's crucial to remember that while the Romans were busy carving their empire into the annals of history, they were also setting the stage for architectural innovation that would echo through the ages like a particularly catchy tune that just won't quit. If you've ever marveled at a neoclassical building, or wondered why half of Europe seems to have a thing for columns and arches, you've got the Romans to thank or blame, depending on your taste in architecture. The durability and adaptability of Roman designs are like the architectural equivalent of your grandma's cast-iron skillet, practical, versatile, and built to last. Take the humble arch, for instance. This simple curve was the linchpin of Roman construction, and it's been holding its own long after the Roman Empire clocked out. From medieval cathedrals to modern bridges, the arch has remained a staple in construction, proving that sometimes the best ideas are the simplest ones. It's like the Romans left us a cheat sheet on how to balance strength and style, and we've been cribbing from it ever since. But let's not get too misty-eyed about the Romans just yet. Their empire eventually crumbled, a victim of overexpansion, economic woes, and perhaps a touch too much lead in their pipes. Yet, their architectural legacy was the gift that kept on giving, like a particularly generous inheritance from a long-lost relative. Medieval builders picked up where the Romans left off, using their designs as a foundation, literally and figuratively, for the soaring cathedrals and fortresses that dotted the landscape of Europe. The Romanesque and Gothic styles owe a debt to Roman ingenuity, with their barrel vaults and sturdy piers echoing the structural principles that the Romans perfected centuries before. Fast forward to the Renaissance, and the Romans were having a bit of a comeback tour. Architects like Brunelleschi and Alberti looked to Roman ruins for inspiration, bringing classical principles back into vogue with a flourish that would make any Roman proud. The Pantheon's dome, in particular, became the envy of architects everywhere, its influence rippling through the ages and showing up in everything from the iconic dome of St. Peter's Basilica to the United States Capitol. It's as if the Romans were whispering through time, reminding us that true architectural genius never goes out of style. Yet, for all their accomplishments, let's debunk a persistent myth. the idea that Roman engineering was flawless. Sure, they built roads that outlasted the empire itself, and aqueducts that were the envy of the ancient world, but they weren't immune to the occasional blunder. Some Roman projects were abandoned mid-construction due to political upheaval or financial mismanagement, leaving behind a trail of half-finished structures that remind us Rome wasn't built in a day, or sometimes at all. The reality is that Roman engineering was as much a testament to their ambition as it was to their ability to adapt and learn from their mistakes. Economically, the Romans understood that infrastructure wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about power and control. Their roads facilitated trade and troop movements, while their aqueducts ensured a steady supply of water to burgeoning cities. This wasn't just about keeping the empire running smoothly, it was about asserting dominance and projecting power. When you can build roads that span continents and aqueducts that defy gravity, you're making a statement that Rome isn't just a city. It's a force of nature. Politically, Roman architecture was a tool of propaganda, a way to win over the hearts and minds of conquered peoples while reminding them who was in charge. The grandeur of Roman structures was a constant reminder of the empire's might, a visual representation of the Pax Romana that promised peace and prosperity in exchange for loyalty and taxes. It was a world view carved in stone, one that left a lasting impression on the societies that followed. As we reflect on the myths and realities of Roman engineering, it's clear that their legacy is a complex tapestry of triumph and toil, innovation and imperfection. They were visionaries who dared to dream big and build even bigger, leaving behind a blueprint for future generations to admire and adapt. But they were also a society built on the labor of the many for the glory of the few, a reality that tempers the romanticized image of Roman perfection. Today, as we walk through cities adorned with columns and arches, it's hard not to feel a flicker of connection to those ancient builders. The Romans left us more than ruins. They left us a legacy of ingenuity and ambition, a reminder that architecture is about more than just buildings. It's about shaping the world and leaving a mark that endures. So, next time you stop to admire a piece of architecture, remember the Romans, the original masters of the built environment. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of human creativity and the impact it can have on the world long after the last stone has been set. As we conclude this journey through Roman architecture, let's carry forward the lessons of their triumphs and tribulations, using them to shape our own world with the same daring and determination. You're snuggled under a yak wool blanket, dreaming of maybe a warmer climate, when a faint bell tolls in the distance. That's your cue, my friend. It's a crisp 4 a.m. in 13th century Tibet, and your day as a monk is about to begin. Not exactly the cushy life of a modern influencer, but hey, you weren't expecting luxury, right? First things first, you shuffle out of bed. Let's be honest, it's more of a mat and slip into your sandals. Every step on the cold monastery floor reminds you that enlightenment isn't served on a silver platter. No, it's more like a side dish to your main course of discipline and humility. The early rise is essential, not just because you're a spiritual powerhouse in training, but it's also practical. The sun's yet to make an appearance, but you've got prayers to chant and a breakfast to catch. Speaking of breakfast, let's talk about your staple, tampa. If you're thinking of a warm, fluffy pancake, think again. Tampa is roasted barley flour, and it's as Tibetan as yak butter tea. You mix it with tea and yak butter, roll it into a doughy ball, and boom, breakfast is served. It's not going to win any culinary awards, but it keeps you going. And when you're a monk, that's what counts. You might even get a sprinkle of dried cheese, if it's a special occasion, or if the monastery's economy is doing well, by which I mean if you scored an extra yak last year. Now, while you're munching away, let's chew over the economic side of your life. The monastic lifestyle is a fascinating blend of spirituality and practicality. Wealth here isn't measured in gold or silver, but in yaks and the butter they produce. More yaks mean more butter, and more butter means more trade power. In fact, your monastery might barter with nearby villages, trading butter for essential goods. It's a microeconomy running on the solid back of these shaggy beasts, and while it might sound a bit bizarre to us today, it's about as efficient as you can get in the highlands of Tibet. With your stomach no longer grumbling, it's time for the morning prayers. Now, don't let Hollywood fool you. This isn't just about humming your way to nirvana. Your chants are a symphony of spiritual devotion and political maneuvering. You see, monasteries in the 13th century were not just spiritual hubs but also power players in local politics. The lamas, like yourself, held significant sway over the regional affairs. When you chant, you're not just reaching out to the divine, you're reinforcing the monastery's influence. It's an intricate dance of faith and politics, one that could rival any modern-day political drama. And speaking of drama, let's not forget that the Tibetan plateau is a hotbed for it. The Mongol Empire is expanding under Genghis Khan, and everyone from the Chinese to the Nepalese has a stake in this Game of Thrones. Your daily chants, in some ways, are a subtle reminder to these powers that the spiritual realm can't be ignored. It's a reminder that while you may be tucked away in a cloister, your influence stretches far beyond these stone walls. So, as you wrap up your morning routine and prepare to face the day, remember that your life as a monk is anything but boring. It's a delicate balance of prayer, politics, and practicality. You're part of a community that values enlightenment, but isn't above using a little earthly influence to get things done. And maybe, just maybe, that extra yak wouldn't hurt to have around. As the echoes of your morning chants fade, it's time to roll up those sleeves, or robes in your case, and dive into the day's work. Spoiler alert, it's a grind, but not in the glamorous hustle culture kind of way. No, your monastery's daily operations require the kind of discipline that makes boot camp look like a vacation. And it starts with the fine art of transcription. Now, don't be fooled by the romantic notion of monks lounging around, leisurely copying manuscripts like they're journaling their dreams. Oh no, my friend, this is transcription meets precision engineering. Picture yourself hunched over a wooden desk, quill in hand, painstakingly replicating every curve and line of ancient texts. Each stroke of ink is a dance with history, but without the fun music. This isn't just a pastime, it's a vital task that keeps the heart of the monastery and its influence pumping. Here's the kicker. A single sheet of parchment in the 13th century was worth more than a fancy latte in today's economy. In fact, creating a single page could take the better part of a day and cost a small fortune in materials and effort. This wasn't just about preserving knowledge, it was about securing the monastery's economic future. Each manuscript you produce is a potential source of power and prestige, traded like a limited edition action figure at a collector's convention. But let's pause for a reality check. The image of monks as peaceful scribes in a serene library, not the full picture. Sure, you're transcribing sacred texts, but you're also involved in the monastery's agricultural hustle. A reminder that enlightenment isn't just a mental exercise. The fields call, and you answer because those yaks won't feed themselves. It's a scene straight out of a medieval version of Farmville, minus the digital detachment. You might be thinking, monks in fields? Sounds zen. But hold your horses or yaks. This labor is less about finding your center and more about backbreaking survival. You're tilling rocky soil at altitudes that would make a mountain goat dizzy. And the weather? Let's just say it has more mood swings than a reality TV show. A good harvest means sustenance and trade, while a bad one could spell disaster. This connection to the land ties directly back to the monastery's survival, intertwining faith with the fickle hand of nature. And let's not gloss over the very human side of these holy men. The idea that monks were all peaceful, passive pacifists, it's a bit of a historical half-truth. Sure, they preached peace and practiced restraint, but they were also strategic operators in a geopolitical chess game. Some monasteries even wielded military power, organizing defense forces to protect their interests. Picture a monk with a prayer wheel in one hand and a sword in the other. Not quite the serene image you had in mind, right? Yet these complexities are what make the 13th century Tibetan monk's life so fascinating. It's a blend of humility and hard labor, spiritual devotion, and shrewd economic management. They were spiritual warriors balancing the sacred and the secular in a world where survival demanded more than just prayers. And as you wrap up your morning in the fields, the day is far from over. The afternoon promises more tasks, perhaps a lesson in medicine or a turn in the kitchen. But that's a tale for another day or the next part of our journey. In the meantime, take a moment to appreciate the duality of your existence, a life where the divine meets the dirt, and enlightenment is just as much about balance as it is about belief. It's not just a day in the life, it's a testament to the resilience and resourcefulness that define the human spirit, even at 13,000 feet above sea level. As you wrap up your morning in the fields, the day is far from over. But let's hit the pause button on the labor grind and dive into something equally riveting: leisure. Now, if you're picturing monks lounging in a medieval spa, think again. Leisure in the monastery is a curious blend of intellectual gymnastics and the occasional dose of drama, kind of like a reality show set in the Himalayas, but with fewer Kardashians and more chanting. First up, let's talk camaraderie. Don't be fooled by the serene facade. These monks aren't just solitary figures lost in meditation. They're part of a tightly knit community that thrives on interaction. Picture this. After a morning of toil, you gather with your fellow monks in the courtyard. It's not a cocktail party, but there's a palpable buzz. Conversations range from the mundane, like who's been sneaking extra butter, to the metaphysical, diving deep into the nature of enlightenment itself. The camaraderie is real, and it's a crucial thread in the fabric of monastic life. But hold on, it's not all kumbaya around the campfire. Where there are humans, there are rivalries, and the monastery is no exception. Maybe it's Brother Dorje eyeing your favorite meditation spot, or perhaps there's a bit of tension over who's leading the evening chants. These rivalries, while seemingly petty, add a dash of spice to the spiritual stew. They remind us that even monks aren't immune to the age-old game of social jockeying. You see, the best meditation spot isn't just a place, it's a status symbol. It's the 13th century equivalent of scoring the corner office. And then there's the gossip. Gossip, the universal pastime. You'd think that monks would be above this, but no, they're as human as the rest of us. There's chatter about who's been a bit too generous with the incense, or whose chanting sounds suspiciously off-key. It's light-hearted mostly, but it serves a purpose. Gossip acts like a social glue, binding the community together through shared stories and occasional giggles. It's a reminder that even in a place devoted to silence and reflection, the human voice finds its way through. Now, let's unpack one of the monastery's most anticipated events, the debates. These aren't your run-of-the-mill arguments over who left the yak butter out. No, these debates are intellectual showdowns, where monks flex their mental muscles like philosophical gladiators. Forget the notion of monks as quiet, passive souls. Picture them instead as cerebral warriors, armed with logic and rhetoric. These debates are not just intellectual exercises, they're social events that draw crowds. Everyone's there, eager to witness the verbal sparring. Debates in the monastery serve multiple functions. They're a training ground for young monks, sharpening their minds and preparing them for leadership roles. They're also a social highlight, breaking the monotony of daily routines. And let's not ignore the underlying competition. Winning a debate earns you respect and prestige, perhaps even a more favourable spot at mealtime. It's the original intellectual sport, and the stakes are higher than you'd think. But here's a myth worth debunking: the idea that monks were completely isolated from the outside world. The truth is, these monasteries were more like cultural hubs than ivory towers. Sure, they were remote, but they weren't cut off. Monks often interacted with lay people, traders, and even political figures. The monastery served as a centre for learning and diplomacy, attracting visitors from near and far. So while the walls were high, the gates were never truly closed. This connection to the outside world was vital for the monastery's survival. It meant access to news, trade, and political alliances. Remember, in the 13th century, knowledge was power, and information flowed like the yak butter tea, sometimes hot, often slow, but always essential. So while the monks appeared to live in seclusion, they were deeply embedded in a web of social and economic interactions. Now, let's circle back to those not-so-holy squabbles. You might think monks, with their vows of poverty and humility, wouldn't fuss over mundane matters. But reality check, they're just as human as the rest of us. Who gets the best seat in the meditation hall? It's not just about comfort, it's a matter of spiritual hierarchy. The best spot offers the perfect blend of peace, light, and acoustics for chanting. It's prime real estate, and competition can get fierce. These squabbles, while seemingly trivial, reveal the intricate social dynamics within the monastery. They show how even in a setting devoted to spiritual elevation, earthly concerns persist. It's a delicate dance of ego and enlightenment, where personal growth and communal harmony must coexist. And maybe, just maybe, it's a reminder that the quest for inner peace often involves navigating the complexities of human relationships. So, as you settle into your afternoon routine, Remember that the monastery isn't just a place of prayer and meditation. It's a vibrant community with its own unique blend of drama, debate, and dynamics. It's a microcosm of the larger world, where spiritual aspirations meet the gritty realities of daily life. And as you ponder your place in this intricate tapestry, know that your journey is far from over. The evening brings its own set of challenges and revelations, but that's a tale for another time. For now, embrace the chaos, the camaraderie, and the constant quest for balance. It's the monastic way, after all. As the sun dips behind the jagged peaks of the Himalayas, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet, you might think a 13th century Tibetan monk's day is winding down to a cozy end. But hold on to your prayer beads, because the evening is just getting started. This isn't your average wind-down routine of Netflix and chill, more like chants and chill, with a side of candlelit contemplation. Your first stop in the twilight hours is the evening prayers, an exercise in spiritual discipline and community bonding. These prayers aren't just a chance to catch up with your inner Buddha, they're a full-blown communal event, akin to the social gatherings we know and love today. Picture the scene, the monastery's main hall, filled with the low hum of monks chanting in unison, their voices weaving a tapestry of sound that echoes off the stone walls. It's a symphony of devotion, each note a thread in the fabric of monastic life. In this part of the day, the myth of the monk as a solitary, silent figure begins to unravel. Sure, you're chanting, but you're also connecting with your fellow monks, sharing a moment of spiritual unity. There's a certain beauty in this collective ritual, a reminder that even in a world of individual enlightenment, we're all part of something larger. It's the medieval version of a group hug, minus the physical contact and with a lot more incense. Once the prayers wrap up, it's time to hit the books, or rather, the scrolls. Evening study sessions are a staple of monastic life, and they're not just about memorizing sutras. These sessions are a chance to delve into the vast ocean of Buddhist philosophy, to question and explore the teachings that guide your life. And let's not forget the logistics. You're doing all of this by candlelight, a flickering glow that adds a touch of drama to the proceedings. It's a scene straight out of a Renaissance painting, but with more yaks and less opulence. Now, let's debunk another myth, the idea that monks lived in ascetic isolation, devoid of any form of entertainment. In reality, the evening study sessions often doubled as a kind of intellectual salon where monks could debate, discuss, and yes, even entertain each other with stories and anecdotes. It's a reminder that even in the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment, a little levity goes a long way. Who knew that a good tale about a mischievous monk could be just as enlightening as a profound philosophical discourse? But before you get too comfortable in this candlelit world of contemplation, let's talk about dinner. Feeding a monastery is no small feat, especially when you're perched on top of a mountain with limited resources. Every meal is a delicate balance of spiritual and practical considerations, a reminder that even the most ascetic life requires sustenance. Tonight's menu? Mort sampa, of course, but with a twist. Perhaps a dash of dried vegetables or a sprinkle of spices, if you're lucky. The logistics of feeding a monastery are a marvel of medieval resource management. It's not just about filling bellies, it's about maintaining the delicate ecosystem that sustains the monastic community. Resources are scarce, and every meal is a testament to the intricate dance of trade, agriculture, and spiritual devotion that defines monastic life. It's a reminder that even in the pursuit of the divine, the mundane realities of survival are never far behind. As you gather with your fellow monks for the evening meal, you're not just sharing food, you're sharing in the communal experience that binds the monastery together. It's a moment of camaraderie, a chance to reflect on the day's events and prepare for the next. And while the menu may be simple, the conversation is anything but. Topics range from the practical, how to manage the monastery's resources, to the philosophical, as monks debate the finer points of Buddhist doctrine. And here's a fun fact. Music and chanting play a significant role in these twilight hours. Debunking the myth that monastic life was devoid of rhythm and melody, the chants that accompany the evening meal aren't just a backdrop. They're an integral part of the monastic experience, a reminder that even in the pursuit of silence, sound has its place. It's a harmonious blend of the sacred and the secular, where every note is a step along the path to enlightenment. So, as the candles flicker and the chants rise and fall like the breath of the mountains, take a moment to appreciate the intricate tapestry of monastic life. It's a world where the divine meets the mundane, where spiritual aspiration coexists with the gritty realities of survival. And as the evening draws to a close, remember that the journey is far from over. Tomorrow brings new challenges, new insights, and new opportunities to explore the delicate balance of faith, community, and individuality that defines the monastic path. In these twilight hours, you're not just a monk, you're a part of an ancient tradition that has shaped the course of history. And while the path to enlightenment may be steep and winding, it's filled with moments of beauty, connection, and discovery. So light that candle, roll up your sleeves, and get ready for the next chapter of your journey. After all, in the world of monastic life, the only constant is change, and the promise of another day filled with the promise of growth and understanding. As the last candle flickers out and the cool mountain air settles in, you can't help but reflect on the day's journey. You, a 13th century Tibetan monk, have been on an adventure through time and tradition that feels as vast as the Himalayan range itself. But don't get too cozy in that yak wool blanket just yet. We've got some unraveling to do. First, let's tackle the myth of the monk as a mere spiritual seeker, a lone figure meditating on a mountaintop, disconnected from the world. The truth is, your daily grind was more like a juggling act, balancing spiritual devotion with roles that could rival any modern-day multitasker. Picture this, you're part spiritual guide, part farmer, part scribe, part diplomat. Forget the image of a solitary sage. Think of yourself as a Renaissance man in robes. Monasteries in 13th century Tibet were not just havens for the spiritually inclined, but were buzzing centers of learning, culture, and, yes, power. They were the medieval equivalent of think tanks, universities, and political lobbying firms, all rolled into one. Sounds like a lot for one place to handle, right? But hey, when you've got centuries of tradition backing you up, you learn to wear many hats, or in this case, many cowls. Let's dive into the economic side of things. Remember those yaks? Well, they were the backbone of the local economy, and monasteries were the C-suite executives running the show, with yaks producing butter and wool, and monks producing manuscripts and wisdom. It was a symbiotic relationship with the surrounding villages. The barter system ruled the day, with monasteries often trading intellectual and spiritual guidance for goods and services. Imagine a stock exchange, but with yak butter as the currency. It's a wonder that didn't catch on globally. Politically, these monks weren't just passive observers. Oh no, they were major players on the world stage. Monasteries often served as diplomatic channels, bridging connections between the Mongol Empire, China, and the various Himalayan kingdoms. They wielded influence like a well-played game of Go, strategically positioning themselves in matters of state and regional stability. Let's not forget the monks' role in international diplomacy. They were like the original LinkedIn, networking with foreign dignitaries and fostering ties that could make or break alliances. In fact, when the Mongols swept through Asia, they didn't just bring swords and soldiers, they also brought a respect for the spiritual and scholarly prowess of the Tibetan monasteries. Some monks even served as advisors to Mongol leaders, doling out wisdom like a spiritual Google search. It's easy to romanticize this era, to see it as a time of pure, unadulterated spirituality. But beneath the chants and the incense, there lay a complex web of economic and political maneuvers. The monastery was a place of sanctuary, sure, but it was also a hub of power, where decisions made within its walls reverberated far beyond them. Now, let's zoom out a bit and think about the legacy of these monks. They weren't just preserving knowledge, they were actively shaping the cultural and intellectual landscape of their time. Through their texts and teachings, they laid the groundwork for philosophical thought that would echo through the ages. They were the custodians of a rich heritage, ensuring that the wisdom of Buddha didn't just survive, but thrived. But here's a question to ponder. How much has really changed since the 13th century? Sure, we've swapped parchment for pixels and yaks for electric cars, but the essence remains the same. Today's influencers, diplomats, and educators are still balancing the sacred with the secular, striving to make a difference in a world that's as complex as ever. The more things change, the more they stay the same, right? In a world that often romanticizes the past, it's crucial to remember that history was as messy as it was magnificent. The monks of 13th century Tibet were not just spiritual icons, but were pivotal players in a grander narrative. They remind us that the pursuit of enlightenment is as much about navigating the human experience as it is about transcending it. So, as you drift off to sleep, cradled by the echoes of ancient chants, let these reflections linger in your mind. Remember that the monks of yesteryear were not so different from us, seeking balance, striving for peace, and grappling with the complexities of their world. In this timeless quest for understanding, we find that the past is not a distant echo, but a living dialogue, ever unfolding and ever relevant. Sweet dreams, and may you wake ready to embrace the next chapter of your journey, whatever it may hold. The sun's just starting to peek over the horizon, painting Osaka Bay in hues of orange and pink, and you're already up, ready to dive into the thrumming heart of 17th century commerce. Welcome to the early Edo period, where being a merchant in Osaka is as close to a roller coaster ride as you can get, minus the safety harness. The year is somewhere around 1650. Tokugawa Ieyasu's shogunate is in full swing, and Osaka is the place to be if you fancy yourself a player in the game of trade. The city is your oyster, or maybe your rice bowl, since rice is the currency of the day. Yep, forget coins. Want to get paid? You better like grains. With a population of around 400,000 bustling souls, Osaka is the third largest city in Japan, trailing only behind Edo, modern-day Tokyo, and Kyoto. Its geographical location is a masterstroke of strategic planning. Situated at the mouth of the Yodo River, it's the gateway to the Seto Inland Sea. If you think of Japan as a giant sandbox of commerce, Osaka is the kid with the biggest shovel. Every morning, the port is a symphony of sounds. Wooden ships creaking, traders haggling, the occasional shout of a sailor trying to avoid a dunk in the bay. Goods flow in and out like clockwork. We're talking everything from silk and cotton to Seikan ceramics. Fancy a bit of math with your history? The Osaka port is moving upwards of 150,000 koku of rice every year. That's enough to feed over 7,500 families. The koku is the star of the show here, a unit of measurement that could sustain one person for a year. So when you hear someone throwing koku around, know they're talking serious business. But don't let the romanticized image of the honorable merchant fool you. Sure, the shonen, or merchant class, might write poetry about honor and integrity, but let's face it, survival trumps poetry every time. The Tokugawa shogunate has yoked the daimyo, or feudal lords, enforcing a rigid class structure that places merchants at the bottom. But here's the twist. They wield the real power because money talks, and it usually has a lot to say when the shogunate's back is turned. Now, Tokugawa Ieyasu and his successors aren't exactly laissez-faire kind of guys. The shogunate's policies are all about control. They want a piece of the pie without getting their hands dirty, so they let merchants run the show while keeping them on a tight leash. Taxes are high, regulations tighter, and the oversight, let's just say it's intense. The shogunate's influence creeps into every transaction, every handshake, every piece of rice exchanged. As you walk through the bustling streets, the air is thick with the smell of fish, spices, and the sweet tang of opportunity. It's a cutthroat world, and deals are brokered with the kind of precision that would make a samurai's sword look like a butter knife. The shogunate might preach simplicity and austerity, but any merchant worth their salt knows that appearances are everything. The more lavish your storefront, the more customers you attract. And who doesn't love a little ostentatious display of wealth, especially when the shogunate samurai aren't watching too closely? Even though you're technically on the lower rung of the social ladder, you're part of an economic powerhouse that's reshaping Japan. The myth of the honorable merchants is just that, a nice story to tell the kids at bedtime. The reality is a world where alliances are as fickle as the wind, and loyalty is a commodity traded like any other. It's a dance of power and politics, and you're right in the middle, trying to keep your balance on this precarious tightrope. So here you are, in a city that never sleeps, where the only constant is change, and the only rule is survival. Your day has just begun, and it's going to be a wild ride. Buckle up, because in 17th century Osaka, the stakes are high, the competition fierce, and the rewards, well, let's just say, if you play your cards right, they could be as plentiful as the rice that lines your pockets. And speaking of rice lining your pockets, let's talk about how you kick off your day in 17th century Osaka as a merchant. Forget the modern idea of a leisurely breakfast with a newspaper. Your morning starts with the smell of rice in the air and a stack of ledgers waiting for your attention. But first, let's fuel up. Your breakfast is as much about utility as it is about flavor. A typical morning meal might consist of miso soup, pickled vegetables, and a bowl of rice, because, let's face it, rice is the real MVP here. It's not just a staple, it's the currency, the sustenance, and practically a deity rolled into one. The cost? Around 1 mummy of silver could get you a koku of rice. That's about 150 kilograms, and considering an average family might consume about 1 koku a year, it's a solid investment. But let's not forget the other essential, tea, that glorious elixir that fuels both commerce and conversation. A good cup of green tea sets you back another half monmi, but the caffeine jolt is priceless when you're navigating the cutthroat world of trade. Once breakfast is squared away, it's time to embrace the daily grind. Your schedule is a veritable maze of negotiations, haggling and schmoozing. If the modern corporate world has taught us anything, it's that meetings could have been emails. But in 1650s, Osaka, face-to-face interactions are non-negotiable. You start your rounds at the rice exchange, where the air is thick with anticipation and the stakes are as high as a daimyo's topknot. Prices fluctuate like a boat in a storm, dictated by the whims of supply, demand, and the occasional natural disaster. Then there's the currency exchange to navigate. The Tokugawa shogunate might have a stranglehold on the economy, but currency is where things get interesting. Rice might be king, but the real power lies in silver and gold. The exchange rate is a living, breathing entity, influenced by everything from regional politics to the latest gossip from Edo. Playing the currency market requires a keen eye and nerves of steel. One wrong move, and your profits could evaporate faster than sake at a samurai banquet. Speaking of bureaucracy, let's dive into the paperwork, because nothing says thriving economy like an avalanche of documents. The shogunate's love affair with red tape is legendary. Every transaction, every shipment, every grain of rice is meticulously recorded, stamped, and filed away. You've got permits for transporting goods, licenses for selling them, and taxes that seem to multiply like rabbits. And just when you think you've got a handle on it, there's a new edict or tax to throw a spanner in the works. Ever heard the phrase, death by 1,000 cuts? That's what it feels like, navigating the merchant bureaucracy. The absurdity of it all might even inspire a chuckle or two, if you weren't too busy drowning in a sea of scrolls. It's all about control, you see. The shogunate's fear of rebellion is only rivaled by their fear of losing economic power. So they create paperwork. Endless, mind-numbing paperwork. It's enough to make you wish for a simpler time, never mind that simpler times didn't have indoor plumbing or antibiotics. Yet you can't help but marvel at the system's efficiency. Despite its draconian nature, the bureaucracy keeps Osaka running like a well-oiled machine. Goods flow, money changes hands, and prosperity hums beneath the surface. It's a testament to human ingenuity, or perhaps stubbornness, that merchants thrive in this intricate dance of commerce and regulation. So, there you are, knee-deep in transactions and treaties, with a cup of tea in one hand and a ledger in the other. You're more than just a cog in the machine, you're the oil that keeps it running smoothly. And while the legend of the honourable merchant might be a bedtime story, the reality is that your wit and resilience are the true heroes of this tale. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, your day is just beginning. The stakes are high, the competition fierce, and the rewards, well, if you play your cards right, they might just be as plentiful as the rice that lines your pockets. As the sun climbs higher, casting a warm glow over the chaotic streets of Osaka, you're still knee-deep in the wheeling and dealing that defined your day. Now it's time to head to the Doshimachi district, the beating heart of Osaka's mercantile world. If this city is a giant marketplace, Doshimachi is its glittering prize. Here, merchants like you gather to swap goods, stories, and strategies, each stall a microcosm of the bustling economy. The smell of incense mingles with the sharper tang of dried fish, creating an aroma that's as much a part of the city as the hum of trade itself. Forget the romanticized notion of trade happening with a gentlemanly handshake. In Doshimachi, negotiation is an art form. 1 part chess match, 2 parts theatre. You size up your competitors, not in terms of physical stature, but by the width of their sleeves. The wider the sleeve, the deeper the pockets, or so the saying goes. And while some might think a smile can seal a deal, here it's the subtle nods, the raised eyebrows, and the occasional strategic cough that really speak volumes. It's in this vibrant marketplace that you meet with a fellow merchant to discuss a potential business deal, a shipment of silk from China, the kind that could make or break your fiscal year. The negotiation dance begins with an exchange of pleasantries, a necessary prelude to any serious discussion. Sure, you might both be smiling, but underneath those polite expressions, it's a battlefield, each word a strategic maneuver designed to tip the scales in your favor. And now, let's puncture a popular myth, the idea that samurai and merchants were like oil and water, forever destined to clash. Sure, samurai might be the poster boys for feudal Japan, all swords and stoicism, but they had a pragmatic streak too. In reality, many samurai were heavily indebted to merchants, relying on them to convert their government-issued rice stipends into cold, hard cash, or silver to be exact. It turns out that honor and practicality can coexist, especially when one's livelihood depends on it. This symbiotic relationship often led to unlikely alliances. Samurai needed the merchants to maintain their lifestyle, while merchants needed the samurai for protection and social legitimacy. It's like a feudal version of the buddy cop movie, minus the car chases and with a lot more paperwork. The samurai might wield a sword, but in the bustling markets of Osaka, it's the merchant with a ledger who often holds the real power. Now, let's talk guilds, those elusive networks that are as much about politics as they are about business. Think of them as the ancient Japanese version of a union, complete with dues and the occasional power struggle. They played a crucial role in setting prices, determining who could sell what, and effectively controlling the flow of goods throughout the city. Joining a guild was practically a rite of passage for any serious merchant, providing everything from protection to the all-important social connections necessary for success. Of course, guilds weren't just about camaraderie and shared interests. They were also political beasts, deeply entwined with the Tokugawa shogunate. The shogunate, ever wary of losing control, kept a watchful eye on these organizations, allowing them to operate as long as they served the state's interests. It was a delicate balance of power, a constant game of cat and mouse where guilds had to maneuver carefully to avoid stepping on the wrong toes. One misstep, and the consequences could be as severe as a sudden increase in taxes, or worse, a ban on trading certain goods. Here's a quotable nugget for you. In the marketplace of Osaka, it's not who you know, but who knows you that counts. Indeed, your reputation is your most valuable asset, and maintaining it requires skillful navigation of both social and political landscapes. It's a world where rumors can sink you faster than a leaky boat, and alliances are only as strong as the latest market trend. But for those who master the game, the rewards are as plentiful as the bustling crowd that throngs the markets every day. As you finalize the terms of your deal, you can't help but reflect on the intricate web of commerce, politics, and human ambition that defines your world. You're not just a merchant, you're a pivotal player in a grand economic ecosystem. The silk deal you've just brokered isn't just a business transaction, it's a testament to your ability to navigate the complex currents of Edo period commerce. With the deal sealed and a polite bow exchanged, you step back into the throng of the market, a little wealthier and a lot wiser. The day is far from over, and there are more opportunities to seize, more deals to broker, and perhaps even a few myths to debunk along the way. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows over the city, you're reminded that in Osaka, the stakes are high and the competition fierce. But for those with the courage and cunning to play the game, the rewards can be as bountiful as the rice that lines your pockets. Stay tuned, because tomorrow promises another day in this mesmerizing dance of commerce, where the lines between legend and reality blur, and every decision could be your fortune or your downfall. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows over the city, you're reminded that in Osaka the stakes are high and the competition fierce. But for those with the courage and cunning to play the game, the rewards can be as bountiful as the rice that lines your pockets. Yet as the day nudges into afternoon, it's time to step away from the bustling market and into another realm of Osaka's vibrant life, the tea house. Now, if you think of a tea house as just a quaint little spot for sipping green tea and nibbling on sweets, think again. In 17th century Osaka, a tea house is a hub of social networking and subtle power plays. a place where merchants like you can unwind while also weaving the intricate threads of business and society. Picture it as the Edo-era version of a modern-day coffee shop crossed with a Wall Street boardroom, peppered with just enough drama to keep things interesting. Inside, the air is thick with the aroma of freshly brewed tea mingling with the occasional whiff of incense. A sensory blend as complex as the social hierarchies at play. You're not just ordering a cup of matcha, you're buying a ticket into a world where alliances are brokered over steaming cups and reputations are as fragile as the porcelain bowls they're served in. Let's talk about the pecking order here. Despite the rigid class system enforced by the Tokugawa shogunate, tea houses offer a unique stage where the lines blur ever so slightly. Sure, the samurai might stroll in with an air of authority, but even they can't ignore the clout you wield. Money might not buy love, but it certainly buys a seat at the table. And when you're sipping tea next to a daimyo's retainer, the conversation can be as valuable as any formal meeting in the marketplace. Yet, here's the twist. While the tea house serves as a great equalizer in some respects, it's also a showcase of the vast disparities that define Edo period society. The merchant class, though influential, is constantly reminded of its lower status. It's like being the cool kid at school who never quite makes it to the in crowd. You may be a financial powerhouse, but the samurai's sword is a reminder of who officially runs the show. In these establishments, the arts play a subtle yet powerful role. Merchants are more than just traders. They're patrons of the arts, fueling a cultural renaissance that echoes through the tatami-matted rooms. From kabuki theatre to haiku poetry, your investments help shape the cultural landscape of the time. But before you romanticize this as a purely altruistic venture, let's be real. Patronage is as much about prestige as it is about passion. Supporting the right artist can elevate your social standing, turning your name into a whispered legend among the tea-sipping elite. But the arts are not immune to the political tensions simmering beneath the surface. The shogunate keeps a watchful eye on cultural expressions, wary of anything that might incite rebellion or challenge the status quo. Censorship is as much a part of the artistic process as the brushstrokes on a canvas. It's a delicate dance, where artists must tread carefully, wielding their creativity like a double-edged sword, a tool for expression and a potential noose if misused. Now, about those romanticized views of merchant life, it's time to spill the tea. Yes, you're living in one of the most dynamic cities of the time, but it's not all sipping matcha and watching kabuki. The harsh reality is a relentless grind where every success is shadowed by the risk of failure. The shogunate's ever-watchful eye and the constant threat of economic policies shifting like sand beneath your feet mean that security is as elusive as a cherry blossom in the wind. Even the social mobility offered by wealth is more mirage than reality. Sure, you can rub elbows with the higher-ups in these tea houses, but back in the real world, those class barriers are as solid as the castle walls. The samurai might bow politely, but you both know that outside these walls, their status still trumps your ledger. As the afternoon wanes, you find yourself reflecting on the delicate balance of life as a merchant, a balance as precarious as a tightrope walk over the Yodo River. You're not just a trader, you're a navigator in a sea of social and economic currents, each wave threatening to tip your boat. Yet, for all the challenges, there's a thrill in the uncertainty, a drive that keeps you moving forward, one deal, one cup of tea at a time. With the tea house experience behind you, it's time to turn your attention to another facet of merchant life, your role as a cultural influencer. As the afternoon sun dips lower, casting a golden hue over Osaka's rooftops, you make your way to a gathering of fellow patrons of the arts. Here, you discuss the latest trends in painting and theatre, but there's an undercurrent of tension, a shared awareness that the shogunate's approval is the invisible hand guiding every brushstroke and script. Your investments in the arts are not merely acts of philanthropy, they're strategic moves in a game where culture is power. By supporting the right artists, you help shape public opinion, subtly influencing the cultural narrative. Yet, there's a constant undercurrent of risk. If an artist's work offends the wrong person, you could find yourself caught in a political storm, your fortune sinking faster than a poorly constructed paper lantern. As the conversation flows, you can't help but compare the romanticized image of the merchant as a carefree patron of the arts with the gritty reality. In truth, every decision is a calculated gamble, where the rewards are as tantalizing as they are perilous. You're not just a figurehead, you're a player in a complex game where the stakes are high and the rules are ever-changing. And speaking of changing rules, let's circle back to the notion of the merchant's life as a romantic ideal. Sure, there's a certain allure to the idea of living on the edge, navigating the intricate dance of commerce, politics, and culture. But for every success, there's a dozen potential pitfalls: economic downturns, political shifts, and the ever-present threat of natural disasters that could wipe out your carefully constructed empire overnight. As the gathering winds down and you make your way back through the bustling streets of Osaka, you're reminded of the delicate balance that defines your world. It's a life of contradictions, where power is both tangible and ephemeral, where the line between legend and reality is as fine as a thread of silk. Yet, despite the challenges, there's a certain magic in the chaos, a relentless drive that keeps the wheels of commerce and culture turning day after day. In the end, the life of a merchant in 17th century Osaka is a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. It's a world where the lines between myth and reality blur, where the only constant is change, and where every decision could be your fortune or your downfall. As the sun sets, casting a final golden glow over the city, you're left with a sense of anticipation for what tomorrow might bring. A new day in the mesmerizing dance of commerce, where the stakes are high, the competition fierce, and the rewards as plentiful as the rice that lines your pockets. Stay tuned, because in Osaka, the story is far from over. As you meander back through Osaka's bustling streets, the day's events swirl in your mind like the steam from a freshly brewed cup of matcha. You've been a veritable maestro in the symphony of commerce, orchestrating trades and deals that ripple through the fabric of society. But as the sun dips below the horizon, bathing the city in a warm, golden glow, it's time to reflect on the broader tapestry of your world. Not just the threads you've woven today, but the grand design of the Edo period's economic landscape. Now, if you're envisioning an idyllic Japan, isolated by choice and content in splendid seclusion, it's time for a reality check. The Edo period's so-called isolation is more myth than fact. Sure, the Tokugawa shogunate implemented the Sakoku policy, locking up the borders tighter than a miser's coin purse. But let's not pretend Japan was a hermit kingdom. The reality? Japan's ports were buzzier than a samurai's fan during a summer festival, with Nagasaki leading the charge as the open door to the outside world. Nagasaki was Japan's lone window to the west, where Dutch and Chinese traders navigated a web of regulations to exchange goods and ideas. The shogunate may have kept a tight grip on foreign influence, but trade was far from a trickle. We're talking about a thriving exchange of silver, silk, and technology, a veritable lifeline to global commerce. Dutch learning, or rangaku, seeped into Japan, bringing with it Western science and medicine, proving that knowledge, like water, finds a way to flow. And let's not forget the ripple effects of your daily grind. The merchant class, with its nimble fingers and sharp wits, was the powerhouse behind Japan's economic engine. You weren't just moving rice and silk, you were shaping society, fueling a cultural renaissance that would echo through the ages. Merchants like you transformed cities into vibrant hubs of innovation and culture, setting the stage for Japan's eventual emergence as a global power. Now, about those romantic tales of merchants living in the lap of luxury while the rest of society toiled, there's a kernel of truth, but don't be fooled by the gilded veneer. The merchant's life was a high-wire act, a daily dance with disaster where one misstep could send you plummeting. The Tokugawa shogunate's policies were as capricious as a cat, and while you might have had the riches, the power to wield them was often just out of reach. Yet, the influence you wielded was undeniable. By financing arts and infrastructure, merchants left an indelible mark on Japanese society, contributing to an urban culture that was as sophisticated as it was diverse. The floating world of ukiyo-e prints and kabuki theatre was as much your creation as it was the artist's, each masterpiece a testament to the complex interplay of commerce and culture. Speaking of culture, let's debunk another myth, the notion that Japan was a cultural monolith during the Edo period. In reality, it was a kaleidoscope of regional identities, each with its own customs, dialects, and traditions. The merchant class played a pivotal role in this cultural mosaic, acting as conduits for ideas and innovations. By trading goods, You were also trading stories, songs, and philosophies, weaving a rich tapestry that defied the notion of a homogeneous society. As the day winds down and you close the ledger on another successful venture, you're part of a legacy that stretches far beyond the borders of Osaka. The trade dynamics of the Edo period laid the groundwork for Japan's future, setting the stage for the Meiji Restoration and the rapid modernization that followed. The seeds of industrialization were sown in the bustling markets and busy ports, where merchants like you dared to dream beyond the horizon. And what of Japan's so-called isolation? The truth is, Japan was never truly isolated, not in the way the term suggests. The Edo period was a time of controlled interaction, a strategic dance with the outside world that allowed Japan to absorb foreign knowledge while maintaining its sovereignty. It was a calculated balance, a savvy maneuver that kept Japan afloat in a sea of global change. So, as you retire for the evening, reflecting on the day's triumphs and trials, take pride in your role as a merchant, an unsung hero in the grand saga of Japan's economic evolution. The world of 17th century Osaka was as much about survival as it was about success, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity that defined an era. You've navigated the shifting tides of commerce and culture, leaving a legacy that echoes through time, a reminder that even in a world of uncertainty, the human spirit is an unstoppable force. In the quiet moments before sleep claims you, ponder the paradoxes of your world, a society that was both insular and interconnected, a class system that both constrained and empowered. This duality was the lifeblood of the Edo period, a reminder that history is rarely black and white, but a spectrum of complexities that defy easy categorization. As the stars twinkle over Osaka, remember, in the grand tapestry of history, every thread counts, and your story is an essential part of the intricate design. In a world where Google Maps can lead you straight into a lake, let's rewind to a time when navigation was more art than app. We're talking about ancient Samoa, smack dab in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, an expanse so vast it makes the Sahara look like a kiddie sandbox. Way before the advent of GPS, these islanders were the original seafaring savants, mastering a craft so intricate that it turned the night sky into their personal roadmap. Forget, "Hey Siri," they had the stars on speed dial. Now, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of this celestial navigation. Picture a vast sky dotted with stars, each one a point on an ancient GPS system. The Samoans weren't just stargazers, they were star users. They observed the rising and setting of specific stars, employing them like directional beacons. One star might tell them they were heading north, while another whispered west in its twinkling Morse code. The practice wasn't just about knowing the stars, it was about understanding their patterns, their seasons, and their stories. A cosmic dance recital written in light years, not light bulbs. The masterminds behind the stellar symphony were the Totai, the master navigators. Think of them as the rock stars of the oceanic world, minus the leather pants and questionable haircuts. These guys didn't need a tour bus, they had canoes. And while they didn't have groupies, they commanded a respect that made even the most aloof cats jealous. The Totai were entrusted with the lives of their fellow voyagers, guiding them across thousands of miles of open ocean with nothing but their wits and the sky. It's like trusting your Uber driver to get you from New York to Paris, except there are no roads, and your driver's only tool is the Big Dipper. Now, if you're wondering how they pulled this off, let's talk specifics. These navigators used a method called wayfinding, an impressive cocktail of observational science and sheer guts. For starters, they divided the horizon into 32 segments, each marked by a specific star or constellation. This grid would allow them to maintain a course over long distances. And get this, they didn't just look at the stars, they also observed ocean currents, bird patterns, and even the color of the sea. It was a masterclass in multitasking, way before it was cool. To put it in numbers, consider this. The Pacific Ocean covers about 63 million square miles. That's a whole lot of water and a whole lot of nowhere to get lost. Yet, for centuries, Samoan navigators crisscrossed this massive blue expanse with an accuracy that would make NASA take notes. Sure, the romantic narrative paints these voyages as serene and spiritual, but the reality was a high-stakes game of survival. One wrong calculation, one misread star, and you were as good as a driftwood. But let's not get too starry-eyed just yet. There's a myth that these navigators possessed an innate, mystical ability to commune with the cosmos like some ancient Jedi. While it sounds cool, the truth is a bit more grounded. It was years of rigorous training, passed down through generations, that honed their skills. Young navigators were taught to memorize hundreds of stars, learning under the watchful eye of seasoned tortai. It was less about mystical whispers and more about muscle memory and meticulous observation. So why did all this matter? Well, in a world where resources were limited and isolation was a double-edged sword, navigation was more than a skill. It was a lifeline. It allowed the Samoans to trade, explore, and connect with other island communities. It was the original LinkedIn, fostering networks and alliances in a time when swimming to the neighbors wasn't exactly an option. The ability to navigate meant the difference between prosperity and starvation, between thriving and merely surviving. As we zoom out to the bigger picture, it's clear these navigational feats weren't just about getting from point A to point B. They were about identity, culture, and survival. The stars were a canvas, and the tortai were the artists painting their stories across the sky, one constellation at a time. Their legacy is a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless drive to explore, understand, and conquer the unknown. In the end, the magic wasn't in the stars themselves, but in the minds that deciphered their secrets. The ancient Samoan navigators weren't just passengers on the ocean, they were its conductors, orchestrating voyages with a precision and daring that still echoes across the ages. And while modern navigation may have traded stars for satellites, the spirit of those celestial pioneers continues to shine just as brightly. And so, with stars as their guiding lights, the Samoans didn't just float aimlessly across the ocean like a message in a bottle. They had a whole arsenal of tricks up their sleeves, or perhaps more appropriately, up their grass skirts. These navigators had a knack for reading ocean swells, the ever-present undulations of the sea that could tell you as much about your location as a highway sign does about your exit. These swells, or long waves, weren't just random ripples, they were reliable signals, like nature's own ticker tape, whispering tales of distant lands and unseen shores. Now, let's talk swells, the ocean's version of sign language. You see, swells are generated by far-off winds and storms, and they travel great distances, offering clues about their origins. By observing them, tortai could deduce which direction a distant island lay. For the Samoans, it was like having a playlist of oceanic rhythms, each beat telling them where to go. Imagine sailing on a canoe, no land in sight, and using the rise and fall of the ocean to steer your course. It's like surfing the world's biggest wave, but your life depends on catching the right one. And then there was the art of reading clouds. Not just the fluffy, daydream-inducing kind, but the serious, business-like clouds that knew their way around the sky. Different types of clouds hinted at different weather patterns and landforms. For example, certain cloud formations might indicate the presence of an island just beyond the horizon, as clouds often form over land. It's like spotting a neon sign in the distance when you're on a long road trip, promising a pit stop with decent coffee. Speaking of road trips, let's dive into the economic and social incentives that made these voyages more than just a Sunday drive. In ancient Samoa, the ocean wasn't a barrier. It was a highway connecting a network of trade routes and alliances. Picture this, a web of canoes crisscrossing the Pacific, each carrying precious cargo like coconuts, kava, and the occasional pig. These weren't just goods, they were lifelines, the currency of survival in a world where isolation could be as dangerous as a stormy sea. But why risk it all on the open ocean? The answer is as pragmatic as it is adventurous. Trade routes were the lifeblood of Samoan society. They allowed for the exchange not only of goods, but of ideas, culture, and even genetic diversity. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of hitting up a farmer's market, a TED Talk, and a dating app, all in one epic journey. These voyages forged alliances with neighboring islands, creating a vast network of kinship and cooperation that was vital for survival. And let's not forget the social capital at play here. Successful navigation meant prestige and power. The tortai weren't just skilled sailors, they were the VIPs of their time, commanding respect and admiration. Completing a successful voyage was the ultimate flex, a testament to one's skill and bravery. It was like winning the Nobel Prize, but instead of a medal, You got to eat a feast fit for a king. Of course, not everything was smooth sailing. Romantic as it might sound, a voyage across the Pacific was no pleasure cruise. The ocean was as unpredictable as a reality TV plot twist. Storms could appear out of nowhere, turning a serene journey into a fight for survival. Food and water were limited, and the risk of getting lost was ever present. These trips were more like an extreme sport than a leisure activity. Forget about room service. Your meals were whatever you could catch or carry. Yet, there's a reason these tales of daring and discovery endure. They're a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of connection. In a world without modern conveniences, the Samoans turned the vast, daunting Pacific into a pathway of possibilities. Their stories remind us that sometimes the greatest adventures lie not in the destination, but in the journey itself. As we wade deeper into the watery depths of Samoan navigation, it's clear that this wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was about survival, identity, and the unyielding human spirit. The stars, the swells, and the clouds were more than tools. They were companions, guiding these seafaring pioneers on their epic quests. And while today we might rely on GPS and Google Maps, there's something undeniably thrilling about the idea of setting sail with nothing but the elements to guide you. It's a reminder that even in a world dominated by technology, the real adventure lies in daring to explore the unknown. While the idea of setting sail with nothing but the elements as your guide sounds like a scene ripped straight from a blockbuster, let's not get carried away by the cinematic allure. It's time to peel back the romantic veneer and dive into the nitty-gritty of Samoan navigation, where the reality was as layered as a millefeuille and just as complex to digest. First up, let's tackle the myth of the noble savage, that insidious stereotype that paints indigenous peoples as primitively pure, living in blissful harmony with nature. Spoiler alert, it's a trope with about as much depth as a kiddie pool. The truth? Samoan navigation was less about mystical communion with the cosmos and more about a rigorous science that would make Einstein nod in approval. These navigators weren't wild-eyed mystics. They were meticulous scientists, armed with generations of painstakingly collected data. Oral tradition played a pivotal role here, serving as the original hard drive, storing and transmitting this vast wealth of knowledge across centuries. Imagine the Tautai, huddled around a fire, passing down navigation secrets like precious heirlooms. These weren't casual campfire tales. They were intricate lessons encoded in chants and stories designed to be memorized and internalized. The depth of this oral tradition was staggering. It was a living library, each word a page in the annals of navigational science. And much like actual libraries, it required constant upkeep. A single misremembered detail could mean the difference between arriving at your destination or becoming an unscheduled guest of Davy Jones. Now, let's talk about the societal scaffolding that propped up these navigational wizards. The Tautai didn't operate in a vacuum. They were the stars of an intricate social system that ensured their skills were honed and respected. Chiefs, or alii, were the executive producers of this maritime drama, providing the resources and the political clout needed to pull off these epic voyages. Much like modern CEOs, they had a vested interest in the success of these missions. The prosperity of their village depended on it. A successful voyage meant more than just goods. It was a boost in prestige and power, a way to flex on rival chiefs with a well-stocked larder and a bevy of new alliances. And then there were the craftsmen, the unsung heroes of the whole operation. These were the master builders, the shipwrights who transformed trees into seaworthy vessels that could withstand the tantrums of the Pacific. Constructing a double-hulled canoe wasn't exactly a weekend DIY project. It was a community affair requiring coordination, skill, and a fair amount of elbow grease. Each canoe was a masterpiece of engineering, crafted without the aid of modern tools, but with an understanding of physics and hydrodynamics that would make an MIT grad blush. But let's not sugarcoat it. These voyages were perilous, and there was no guarantee of a happy ending. The ocean was as unpredictable as a toddler on a sugar high. Despite the navigators' expertise, they were at the mercy of nature's whims. Storms could turn a journey into a harrowing battle for survival, while the ever-present risk of running out of provisions loomed like a spectre over every voyage. These weren't leisurely cruises with buffet dinners and deck chairs. They were high-stakes ventures where every decision mattered. Yet the idea of the noble savage persists, partly because it's just so darn appealing. Who doesn't love the notion of a serene, unspoiled Eden populated by wise, nature-loving souls? But this romanticized view does a disservice to the complexity and sophistication of Samoan society. It glosses over the hard realities, the sweat and toil that went into mastering the art of navigation. These weren't carefree wanderers. They were skilled professionals, backed by a society that recognized and valued their expertise. So, as we continue to unravel the tapestry of Samoan navigation, let's keep our eyes peeled for both the beauty and the grit. It's a story woven from threads of tradition and innovation, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. In the end, the true magic lay not in the stars themselves, but in the minds that read them, the hands that built the canoes, and the communities that supported these epic journeys. Stay tuned for more as we navigate deeper into this ocean of history. The next leg of our journey promises to be just as enthralling as we delve into the evolving role of navigation in shaping Samoan identity and its broader implications across the Pacific. But for now, let's tip our hats to those ancient voyagers who dared to decipher the secret language of the sea and the sky, turning the vast unknown into a realm of endless possibilities. And speaking of deciphering the secret language of the sea, let's dive into the daily grind of an ancient Samoan navigator, where the open ocean was both a classroom and a battlefield. Imagine being a tortai, standing on a canoe, the horizon stretching infinitely in all directions, like a blank canvas daring you to paint your path. But before you get carried away picturing a serene voyage under a warm sun, let's talk about the real challenges that made these journeys as unpredictable as a toddler with a crayon. First up, the weather. If you've ever planned a picnic only for rain to gatecrash, you'll sympathize with these navigators. The Pacific weather could switch moods faster than a caffeinated squirrel. One minute, you're cruising under clear skies. The next, you're in a storm that makes your canoe feel like a leaf in a blender. And it's not just rain we're talking about. Winds could swing from gentle breezes to howling gales faster than you can say, batten down the hatches. Now, you might think, why not just check the forecast? If only. Our ancient navigators relied on the original weather app, their instincts and experience. They read the skies like a book, interpreting cloud formations and wind patterns. But even the best meteorologist has off days, and for the Samoans, a misjudgment meant more than wet socks. It was a matter of survival. Next on the agenda, the physical toll. We're not talking about a quick jaunt across a pond here. Samoan voyages spanned thousands of miles, often taking weeks or even months. Think of a marathon, but swap the running shoes for a canoe and the cheering crowds for the vast, indifferent ocean. The physical demands were relentless. Rowing for hours on end, often against the wind, was no small feat. And let's not even get started on the cramped quarters. If you've ever been stuck in a middle seat on a long-haul flight, you'll have a taste of the discomfort. Except, on these voyages, there was no aisle to stretch your legs. And then there was the small matter of sustenance. Provisioning for these trips was an exercise in logistics that would give modern supply chain managers nightmares. Fresh water and food were finite resources, and running out wasn't just inconvenient, it was catastrophic. The navigators had to be as adept at rationing as they were at reading the stars. Fishing was often the solution, but when the sea was uncooperative, the crew faced the grim prospect of hunger. So, why endure all this hardship? The answer lies in the political tapestry of the Pacific. Navigators weren't just explorers, they were key players in expanding territories and forging diplomatic ties. These voyages were the ancient equivalent of state visits, with canoes serving as both Air Force One and diplomatic limo. Chiefs relied on these missions to expand their influence, and a successful journey could shift the balance of power like a well-played hand in a game of poker. Navigators carried not just goods but messages and alliances. They were the original diplomats, their skills in negotiation and navigation equally prized. A well-executed mission could secure trade agreements or marriages that bolstered a chief's standing. These were the original power plays, with territories won not by the sword but by the oar. In this oceanic chess game, the tortai were the knights, navigating both seas and politics with equal dexterity. And here's the kicker. Despite the high stakes, the allure of these voyages still resonates. Maybe it's the thrill of the unknown, the idea of setting out with nothing but skill and the sea to guide you. Or perhaps it's the notion of a simpler time when human ingenuity was the ultimate tool. Either way, these navigators were rock stars in their own right, their exploits the stuff of legend. As we wrap up this leg of the journey, let's indulge in a little modern-day comparison. Picture the chaos of a missed connection at an airport or the sting of a 15-airport sandwich. Now, imagine facing those frustrations with no phone, no credit card, and a storm looming on the horizon. Lost luggage? Try losing your bearings in the middle of the Pacific. At least you don't have to worry about overpriced airport food when your menu's dictated by what you can catch. But maybe that's the point. Whether it's navigating the open sea or the crowded terminals, the journey is always about more than the destination. It's about resilience, adaptability, and the relentless drive to find our way, no matter the odds. In that way, ancient Samoan navigators faced challenges that are strikingly familiar, even if their solutions were written in stars rather than on screens. As we chart our course towards the next chapter, remember this: history isn't just a series of events, but a testament to human tenacity. And while we might have traded canoes for jets and stars for GPS, the spirit of exploration, the desire to connect, to discover, to understand, remains unchanged. So stay tuned, because the story of Samoan navigation is far from over, and the ocean of history still holds many secrets waiting to be uncovered. And so, just like that, we've paddled our way into the present. The ocean that once seemed as vast and unknowable as a cryptic text message from your ex is now a little less mysterious, all thanks to the indomitable spirit of the ancient Samoan navigators. But what's the point of rehashing all this ancient seafaring stuff, you ask? Well, let's dive into why these old-school oceanic experts still matter today. First off, let's talk cultural revival. In the past few decades, there's been a massive wave of interest in reviving traditional navigation techniques. It's like a nostalgic throwback to the ultimate unplugged road trip, but instead of a vintage van, you've got a canoe. And leading this charge is the Polynesian Voyaging Society, founded back in 1973. These modern-day tortai had been hitting the high seas, retracing ancient routes without relying on GPS or Google Maps. Talk about going old school. Their journeys have reignited a passion for traditional navigation, proving that sometimes the best way forward is to paddle back to our roots. Now, you might think that reviving these ancient techniques is purely about cultural preservation. A noble cause, sure, but one that might lack practical application in today's tech-obsessed world. But hold on to your digital compasses, because these ancient skills have more relevance than you might think. Modern navigators, particularly those involved in sustainability efforts, are taking notes from the Samoans. In a time when climate change is rocking our world harder than a late-night karaoke session, understanding natural navigation is becoming increasingly vital. Imagine harnessing wind, waves, and stars to chart a course, reducing our reliance on fossil fuels and high-tech gadgets. It's like nature's GPS with an eco-friendly twist. And let's not forget the economic angle. The resurgence of traditional navigation is more than just a cultural renaissance. It's a chance to bolster local economies and tourism. Today's voyagers aren't just sailing for the nostalgia trip. They're connecting communities, fostering trade, and promoting sustainable tourism. It's a win-win situation where cultural heritage becomes a driving force for economic growth. Picture this: tourists flocking to experience the authentic thrill of navigating by stars, boosting local economies with every paddle stroke. But before we get too carried away on this feel-good wave, let's throw a reality check into the mix. Despite the romantic allure of these revival movements, they face a sea of challenges. Funding is a constant hurdle, as traditional navigation doesn't exactly scream investment opportunity to most modern financiers. There's also the issue of knowledge transmission. The skills honed over centuries can't simply be downloaded like the latest app. They require years of dedicated training and practice. It's a labor of love, and sometimes a logistical nightmare. Yet, the allure of the past is undeniable. In an era where our lives are increasingly dominated by screens and algorithms, there's something profoundly appealing about returning to the basics. The Samoan navigators remind us that human ingenuity is the ultimate technology. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the most sophisticated systems are those crafted not in laboratories, but in the wild, open expanse of nature. And speaking of technology, let's not overlook the irony here. While we celebrate the revival of traditional navigation, we're also witnessing its influence on modern tech. Engineers and designers are looking to ancient techniques to inspire new innovations. Think about it, using ocean currents and wind patterns to inform cutting-edge designs in transportation and renewable energy. It's a futuristic vision rooted in ancient wisdom, proving that the past and future can coexist in a beautiful, symbiotic relationship. So, where does this leave us in the grand scheme of things? The legacy of Samoan navigation is more than just a chapter in a history book. It's a reminder of the resilience and adaptability of the human spirit. These ancient navigators turned the vast, intimidating Pacific into a navigable highway, connecting cultures and communities. Their story is a lesson in collaboration, innovation, and the relentless pursuit of understanding our world. In the end, the stars that once guided the Samoans across the ocean now illuminate a path of possibility, inspiring new generations to explore, innovate, and connect. The lessons of the past continue to ripple through time, challenging us to think beyond the horizon and to embrace the unknown with courage and curiosity. So, next time you find yourself lost in the modern world, remember those ancient navigators who dared to decipher the unpredictable language of the sea. Because, let's face it, whether we're crossing oceans or navigating the complexities of life, we could all use a little bit of that old Samoan magic. In the sprawling expanse of the Pacific Ocean, where land is as elusive as a unicorn at a science fair, the ancient Micronesians were the unchallenged masters of a watery domain. These folks weren't just drifting aimlessly on rafts cobbled together with hope and coconut fibers. They were executing sophisticated maneuvers that would make even the most seasoned modern sailors tip their hats, or, more likely, their GPS devices. Forget about the romanticized image of the primitive islander staring blankly at the horizon. These maritime maestros had skills that would make even the most advanced tech seem like child's play. And they did it without the luxury of an app store. Let's talk about their playground, the Pacific Ocean, covering a modest 63 million square miles. That's right, miles, not feet. If you're bad at visualizing numbers, that's about half of the Earth's entire water surface. The Micronesians weren't deterred by such dizzying vastness. Instead, they saw a network of routes and possibilities, like a cosmic subway map, without the delays or questionable hygiene. They crisscrossed this oceanic expanse with a confidence that baffles modern sailors who rely on more than just the stars to find their way home after a night out. Speaking of stars, let's dive into the celestial navigation these folks employed. The Micronesians used the night sky like a giant, twinkling GPS. No, they weren't stargazing romantics whispering sweet nothings to Orion's belt. For them, the stars were a precise, reliable navigation tool. They tracked the movements and positions of stars to determine direction and position, a method that would later be known as sidereal navigation. While today we might need a smartphone to tell us which way is north, these seafarers had it all mapped out in their heads. They could pinpoint their location with alarming accuracy, making them the human equivalents of Google Maps, minus the annoying recalculating voice. But wait, there's more. The Micronesians didn't just rely on the stars. The ocean itself was a partner in their navigational dance. They read ocean swells with the same precision a sommelier might use to assess a fine wine. These swells, created by distant winds, provided a natural compass. By understanding their direction and rhythm, the Micronesians knew which way to steer their canoes, like a jazz musician riffing off a familiar tune. This skill wasn't some mystical mumbo-jumbo. It was an acquired expertise honed through generations of keen observation and practice. And let's not forget the birds, those feathered GPS satellites. The Micronesians observed bird behaviors to help them locate land. Birds like the frigate bird, which can't land on water, would fly out to sea during the day and return to land at night. By watching their flight patterns, the Micronesians could infer the direction of the nearest landmass. It's like having a living, flapping road sign, a bit more unpredictable, sure, but effective nonetheless. Now, let's address the myth of the primitive islander, a trope as outdated as a dial-up modem. The notion that Micronesians were bumbling around the ocean by chance is not only dismissive, but also laughably inaccurate. These people developed sophisticated maritime technology that included outrigger canoes designed for stability and speed. The canoes were engineering marvels, allowing them to travel thousands of miles across open water. Picture this: a 60-foot canoe, expertly crafted from breadfruit trees with an outrigger for balance and a triangular sail for propulsion. The craftsmanship and understanding of hydrodynamics were on par with any shipbuilding of the time, and then some. This was no small feat considering the resources they had at their disposal. When European explorers finally stumbled upon Micronesia, they were flabbergasted, and not just because they had to admit that others had beaten them to the open ocean game. They found a culture with a deep understanding of their environment, a people who had mastered the art of living with the sea, not just surviving it. The Micronesians weren't just getting by, they were thriving in conditions that would make most of us break out in a cold sweat. So, next time you hear the term primitive thrown around like a casual insult, remember the Micronesians, who were anything but. These were people who turned the vast, intimidating Pacific into their backyard, using stars, waves, and birds as their guides. They had navigational skills that were not only advanced for their time, but remain impressive even today. As we continue to marvel at the technological wonders of modern navigation, let's not forget the ancient Micronesians whose legacy sails on, one star and wave at a time. Now let's shift gears from the vast Pacific to the heart of its navigational marvels, the Micronesian canoes. These weren't your run-of-the-mill, floating pieces of driftwood. Oh no, these were the Ferraris of the ancient maritime world, crafted with an eye for detail that would put even the most obsessive car enthusiast to shame. Imagine, if you will, the craftsmanship involved in building a 60-foot canoe, not just to float, but to glide across the ocean like a hot knife through butter. If the Pacific was their playground, then these canoes were their trusted companions, built with precision and a hefty dose of communal effort. Let's talk materials. The Micronesians didn't exactly have a Home Depot around the corner, so they turned to their lush surroundings for resources. Breadfruit trees were a popular choice for the hulls. Why? Because they were abundant, lightweight, and resistant to water. Basically the triple threat of canoe building materials. Just imagine the labor involved, felling these trees with stone tools, then hollowing them out with nothing more than elbow grease and determination. It's enough to make your back ache just thinking about it. And let's not overlook the coconut fibers, which were transformed into ropes stronger than your morning coffee, used to lash parts of the canoe together. It's like turning straw into gold, except way more impressive because it actually worked. But here's the kicker. This wasn't a solo endeavor. Building a canoe was a community project, akin to a modern barn raising, but with way more stakes, considering this was a lifeline, not just a nice place to store hay. Entire villages would come together, pooling their skills and resources. It was a societal investment, with everyone from the chief to the youngest child having a hand in the process. It's like a potluck where everyone brings something to the table, except instead of food, they're contributing labor and expertise. The result? A vessel capable of not just surviving the ocean's wrath, but thriving in it. Now, let's dive into the economics of these maritime marvels. Canoes were not just tools for getting from point A to point B, they were multifunctional assets in the Micronesian economy. Think of them as the Swiss Army knives of the sea. Trading was a big deal, an economic lifeline really. Islands lacked certain resources, so they relied on trade to fill the gaps. Canoes were the cargo trucks of their time, ferrying everything from food to pottery to other islands. And it wasn't just about goods. Canoes also facilitated the exchange of ideas, cultures, and yes, the occasional disagreement that needed settling. But more on that later. Speaking of disagreements, let's not sugarcoat it. Canoes played a pivotal role in warfare too. When diplomacy failed, as it often does because humans are predictably unpredictable, these vessels became war machines. They were equipped to carry warriors, weapons, and a boatload, pun intended, of strategy. The Micronesians weren't just sailors, they were tacticians, using their canoes to outmaneuver opponents in ways that would make a chess grandmaster proud. Their battles were not just about brute force, but cunning and skill, leveraging the ocean's vastness as both a barrier and a battlefield. But let's not get carried away on a wave of romanticism. The reality was often harsh. Canoes required constant maintenance. a task as relentless as the tides themselves. Salt water is a relentless adversary, corroding and weakening even the sturdiest of materials over time. The Micronesians had to be ever vigilant, repairing and reinforcing their canoes with the same dedication you might reserve for maintaining a classic car, if that car also happened to be your only means of transport and survival. And here's an economic twist for you. These canoes were so valuable that they became a form of currency in themselves. Chiefs would sometimes gift canoes to solidify alliances or as a gesture of goodwill. It's like giving a Tesla to your neighbor to say, hey, let's be friends. Except, with a much higher appreciation for craftsmanship and survival. The political and social implications were vast, weaving a complex tapestry of alliances, rivalries, and exchanges that went way beyond simple bartering. These canoes were more than just vessels. They were symbols of social status and power, their worth extending far beyond their physical form. So, when we talk about Micronesian canoes, let's remember they were not just about getting from point A to point B. They were the heartbeat of a culture that thrived on the ocean's edge, a testament to human ingenuity and the power of communal effort. As we sail through this historical exploration, remember these canoes were not just tools but testaments to a way of life that defied the limitations of their time. And while they may not appear on the cover of glossy magazines today, their legacy is etched in the waves that continue to lap at Micronesia's shores. As we paddle forward, the story of these canoes and the people who built them remains as compelling as ever, with plenty more currents to navigate. As we continue riding this wave of historical intrigue, let's steer our canoe toward the social and political structures that were as intricately woven as a Micronesian sail. Imagine a society where the true celebrities weren't pop stars or Instagram influencers, but navigators. Yes, these seafaring savants were the original rock stars, minus the groupies, but with a fan base that spanned entire archipelagos. Their skills were so revered that they were practically deified, their mastery over the ocean likened to a divine gift. Move over, Poseidon, these guys were the real deal. In this oceanic society, the ability to navigate was more than just a practical skill. It was a ticket to the upper echelons of social prestige. These navigators, known as Palu, were the keepers of oceanic wisdom, the ones who could read the stars like a bedtime story and interpret the whispers of the waves better than any oracle. They were entrusted with the safety and success of voyages, making them indispensable to both survival and prosperity. Imagine the pressure. One wrong turn, and you're not just lost at sea, you're also demoted to a mere mortal status. But when they succeeded, which was often, they were hailed as heroes, cementing their status in the societal hierarchy. The political landscape of Micronesia was as fluid as the ocean itself, with alliances and power dynamics constantly shifting like the tides. Navigators played a crucial role in this watery chess game. Their ability to connect distant islands turned them into key players in diplomatic relations and trade networks. They weren't just ferrying goods, they were ferrying influence. Consider this. A successful trading voyage could bring back not only valuable resources, but also enhance the standing of a chief or a village. It's like returning from a business trip with a deal that doubles your company's stock value overnight. Talk about making waves. These navigators were the linchpins of trade, the ones who ensured that the flow of goods between islands was as smooth as a well-oiled machine. Trade wasn't just about exchanging coconuts for pottery, it was the lifeblood of these island communities, a means of acquiring resources that were scarce or unavailable locally. Picture a bustling marketplace, but instead of brick-and-mortar stores, you have canoes laden with everything from woven mats to rare shells, all thanks to the navigational prowess of these oceanic maestros. Now, let's not sugarcoat it. The role of navigators wasn't just about peaceful exchanges and mutual back-scratching. Sometimes their skills were called upon for less friendly endeavors. When diplomatic negotiations went south, or when resources became too scarce for comfort, these navigators found themselves at the helm of war canoes. Their knowledge of the seas became a strategic asset in warfare, allowing them to launch surprise attacks or execute daring escapes. Imagine coordinating a naval battle without the aid of radar or radio, relying solely on the natural elements and your own wits. It's enough to make a modern-day military strategist break out in a cold sweat. In times of conflict, the navigator's ability to read the ocean was as crucial as any weapon. By understanding the currents and swells, They could position their canoes for maximum advantage, outflanking opponents who were less attuned to the sea's secrets. It's like having the home field advantage, except your field is constantly moving and can swallow you whole if you're not careful. These maritime tacticians turned the vastness of the Pacific into a chessboard, where every wave and wind gust was a potential move. But let's bring it back to the human element, because beneath the heroic veneer, navigators were still very much human. The pressure of their role was immense, with entire communities depending on their expertise. One wrong move could mean disaster, not just for those on the canoe, but for the entire village counting on a successful voyage. It's like being a pilot without an autopilot, where every decision is life or death, and GPS is just a twinkle in the night sky. Despite the stakes, or perhaps because of them, the navigator's legacy was immortalized through oral traditions and cultural practices. Stories of legendary voyages were passed down through generations, each retelling a mix of fact and embellishment, creating a tapestry of history and myth. These tales served as both entertainment and education, teaching the next generation of navigators the intricacies of their craft. It's the ancient equivalent of a masterclass taught around a fire under a canopy of stars. As we paddle further into this historical narrative, let's acknowledge the dual nature of these navigators' existence, revered yet burdened, celebrated yet constantly tested. Their skills shaped the social and political landscapes of their time, leaving a legacy that continues to ripple through the waters of history. The next time you look up at the stars or feel the ocean's pull, remember these navigators, who turned the vast, unpredictable Pacific into a stage for their remarkable feats. And while they may not have had the luxury of modern technology, their mastery of the sea remains a testament to human ingenuity and the enduring spirit of exploration. Speaking of the enduring spirit of exploration, let's delve into the legends and myths that swirled around Micronesian navigation like the very trade winds that propelled their canoes. Tales that, while steeped in an ocean of truth, have often been inflated to dirigible proportions by both islanders and outsiders alike. The romanticized image of the intrepid navigator, staring down the angry Pacific with nothing but a star chart in his mind and a sail at his back, is as captivating as it is misleading. But hey, what's history without a bit of embellishment, right? For starters, let's tackle the notion that these navigators were guided by some mystical, almost supernatural connection to the sea, a kind of oceanic sixth sense. While it's true that their skills were extraordinary, attributing them to magic is like saying Einstein solved physics with the power of positive thinking. The reality was far more grounded. These navigators spent years honing their craft, learning the subtle cues of the environment, a cloud formation here, a change in wind direction there. Their expertise was a product of relentless practice, not the result of a weekend seminar on sea sorcery. Yet these myths gained traction, particularly when Western explorers began to take notice. Enter stage left the Europeans, who often viewed the Pacific through a kaleidoscope of wonder and misunderstanding. To them, the Micronesians' abilities seemed otherworldly, a sentiment that was both a compliment and a convenient narrative. The idea that primitive islanders could navigate vast ocean distances without modern technology was a hard pill to swallow for those accustomed to sextants and compasses. So, the myth of the mystical navigator fit neatly into a colonial mindset eager to romanticize and simultaneously undermine indigenous expertise. Now, let's splash a bit of cold reality on this rosy picture. While the legends painted Micronesian navigators as flawless sea wizards, the truth was grittier. Navigational errors did occur, leading to unintended landings or, worse, becoming lost at sea. The Pacific, after all, is not a particularly forgiving teacher. These mishaps were part and parcel of life on the waves, a reality often glossed over in favor of more heroic narratives. But isn't that just like us humans? We love a good underdog story, as long as we can skip the chapters where the dog gets lost. The spread of these legends also had a curious impact on Western perceptions of Micronesian cultures, framing them as both exotic and enigmatic. This double-edged sword of admiration and condescension played right into colonial narratives, where the noble savage trope was trotted out as frequently as a Victorian tea set. The Micronesians, for their part, were acutely aware of how these perceptions could be leveraged. Some navigators even leaned into the mystique, much like a magician guarding his tricks, knowing that a shroud of mystery could be as powerful a tool as any outrigger canoe. But here's where the story gets a little darker. Colonial powers, ever the opportunists, sometimes use these myths to justify their own agendas. The image of the Micronesian navigator as a mystical figure was occasionally wielded as a tool of control, implying that such skills were innate and therefore unteachable to outsiders. This narrative conveniently ignored the rigorous training and knowledge transfer that formed the backbone of Micronesian navigation. It was a subtle form of cultural gatekeeping, one that underscored colonial ideologies of superiority while exploiting indigenous knowledge for their own ends. Yet, amidst this exploitation, the legends also served as a cultural treasure, a vibrant tapestry of stories that kept Micronesian history alive in the face of external pressures. These tales were not just bedtime stories, but lifelines, preserving a sense of identity and continuity across generations. They were the original viral content shared and reshaped by communities to fit the needs of the moment. And like any good viral meme, they carried kernels of truth, wrapped in layers of myth and metaphor. So, how do we reconcile these legends with historical reality? It's a balancing act, like navigating the precarious path between fact and fiction. We can admire the romantic allure of these myths, while acknowledging the hard, often brutal realities faced by the navigators. They were neither demigods nor hapless wanderers, but skilled practitioners of an art that demanded respect, dedication, and a fair share of humility. In this swirling sea of myth and fact, the Micronesian navigators emerge not as mythical figures, but as masterful navigators of both oceans and cultures. Their legacy is one of resilience, adaptability, and an uncanny ability to read the world in ways that continue to inspire awe and admiration. As we continue to chart the course of this historical narrative, let's keep in mind the dual nature of these stories, both a cultural treasure and, at times, a tool of colonial manipulation. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between the stars and the sea. And as we set our sights on the horizon, the next chapter of the saga awaits, ready to reveal its secrets one wave at a time. As we sail through the sea of history, it's time to drop anchor and reflect on the legacy of these extraordinary navigators who, against all odds, turned the vast Pacific into their personal highway. Fast forward to modern times, and you'll find that Micronesian maritime skills are experiencing a renaissance of sorts. Think of it as the ultimate cultural throwback, but instead of vinyl records or retro fashion, we're talking about reviving ancient navigational practices that have somehow outlasted the rise and fall of empires and empires of rise and fall. In a world where GPS is as ubiquitous as a teenager's TikTok account, you might wonder why anyone would bother learning to navigate by the stars. But for many in Micronesia, this revival is about more than nostalgia. It's a matter of cultural pride and survival. Today, organizations like the Micronesian Voyaging Society are working tirelessly to rekindle this ancient wisdom, ensuring it's not just a dusty relic in a museum, but a living, breathing tradition. It's like bringing a classic car out of the garage not just to admire but to drive. Let's talk numbers because, as they say, the devil's in the details. Imagine this. There are over 2,000 islands in Micronesia, spread across a vast expanse of ocean that covers more than 3 million square miles. That's a lot of water to cover without a single road sign in sight. Yet, the revival of these ancient skills is more than just a local affair. It's attracting global attention from anthropologists, historians, and even the occasional curious tourist. The appeal lies in the idea that these skills represent a form of knowledge that modernity, with all its tech-savvy shortcuts, can never truly replicate. The economic context is equally fascinating. For island communities, the ability to navigate without modern technology isn't just a quaint tradition, it's an economic lifeline. As climate change threatens to disrupt traditional fishing patterns and trade routes, these navigational skills offer a sustainable alternative. It's like switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy, except in this case, the energy source is the time-tested wisdom of your ancestors. But let's not sugarcoat it. A revival of this magnitude isn't without its challenges. There's the uphill battle of fighting against the current, quite literally and metaphorically, as younger generations who are more accustomed to smartphones than sextants must be convinced of the value of ancient knowledge. And then there's the funding issue. Reviving a cultural practice involves more than just goodwill. It requires cold, hard cash. Grants and donations are crucial to keeping these programs afloat, much like the canoes they aim to preserve. Yet, despite these hurdles, the revival is gaining momentum. In 2016, the traditional art of navigation was recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage, a move that not only brought international recognition, but also a sense of validation to communities that have long been the custodians of this rich legacy. It's like finally getting the accolades for a skill you've been mastering for years. Validation, long overdue, but oh so sweet. But why should the rest of the world care about a bunch of islanders paddling around in canoes? Well, for one, their adaptability is a lesson for all of us. In a world that's constantly changing, be it through technology, climate, or geopolitical shifts, there's something profoundly inspiring about a culture that has survived and thrived by embracing change, not resisting it. The Micronesians teach us that resilience isn't about clinging to the past, but about weaving the old and new into a cohesive whole. Their story also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of losing touch with our roots. In an age where we're more disconnected from nature than ever, the Micronesian navigators remind us of the importance of living in harmony with our environment. They didn't just use the ocean, they understood it, forming a symbiotic relationship that ensured mutual survival. It's a stark contrast to our current consumer-driven culture, where resources are often exploited without a second thought. And let's not forget the human element, the sheer determination and ingenuity it takes to master a skill that, on paper, seems almost impossible. The Micronesian navigators are a testament to the power of human potential, proving that with enough dedication, even the most daunting challenges can be overcome. It's a lesson that transcends time and geography, resonating with anyone who's ever had a dream and the grit to pursue it. As we wrap up this maritime odyssey, it's clear that the legacy of Micronesian navigation is more than just a historical curiosity. It's a rich tapestry of culture, resilience, and innovation that continues to ripple through the waves of time. Whether you're a history buff, a cultural enthusiast, or just someone who appreciates a good underdog story, there's something in this legacy for everyone. So, the next time you find yourself staring at the night sky, remember the navigators who once read those stars as easily as you read these words. Their journey may have started centuries ago, but their story is far from over. In fact, it's just getting started.